So the planning committee's held on the 20th of March and the reconvened meeting on the 27th of March. I'm going to leave those to one side and the chair will sign them himself when he arrives. And if he doesn't arrive before the end of the meeting, then I'll sign them at that stage. So next, we'll go to apologies. Sorry, I'm doing it in reverse order here. Councillor Maguire, I'm just going to light you up here.
I'm going to carry. Thanks, Chair. I'm aware Councillor O'Reilly's in the building, so I'm sure he'll be joining us, but we have an apology from Councillor Devane Gallagher.
Okay, thank you, Conor.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, and no further apologies, and we've done item 2 to sign the minutes. Number 3 is declarations of interest. Councillor McGrath first.
Thank you, Chair. Application number 2.
So
I'll be stepping in.
okay, so that's number 5 on my agenda. I'll inform you when that comes up, and then, or I'll give you time, I mean, to get it. Councillor Mahan.
Thank you, Chair. Agenda item number 5, application number 2. And I'll step out. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Campbell.
Chairman, item 6, application number 1. Declaration.
Okay. Thank you. I'll just wait for the chair to take a seat in case he wants to. Okay. There's something that may come up later on, and if you wish, you can do it at that stage. Thank you, Chair. Okay, so now we're going on to item number 4, which is LA 1024-0355 as a PAD, and Darren's going to do that one. Sorry, you can push your light, Darren. I don't know what you want to light up. Okay.
Good afternoon, members. Over this side of the table today, I'm going to do paper A and paper B, and then Seamus will take over and do the paper C, the call-in applications. So just to go through where we are then. So paper A, the council has received notification in relation to the drilling of 3 boreholes. So the drilling of 3 boreholes north of the Cavanagh Gold Mine, on lands 310 metres east of 60 Botter Upper Road. The applicant then is Flint Ridge Resources Limited. The recommendation then is not to issue a direction. So just a reminder, members, this is not an application for planning permission. The applicants have come along and said they're going to utilise permitted development rights. And the council then has the opportunity to say, no, you can't use your permitted development rights. You need to make a planning application. And you do that by issuing a direction. So I'll just go through that. The details of what's being proposed. So the Cavanagh Mine, members, on the screen then you can see, I'm sure you know the location well, so almost in the middle, then you're out to Dromore Road, and the Cavanagh Mine site then is off the Dromore Road, located in the countryside. The existing mine then has planning approval. May 1995, Oma Minerals Limited was granted planning permission at the site. And then there was an approval in July 2015 for additional works, and there was a judicial review against that, which was unsuccessful, and that judicial review was also appealed, and that was unsuccessful as well. So the mine has planning approval and is operating out there. So what's proposed now then, members, is, sorry, there's an awful delay just. So what's proposed now then is to drill 3 boreholes on lands outside of the mine site. So you can see on the screen the mine area then is shown. You can see the extent of the existing works. The proposed drilling then of the 3 boreholes is the north of the existing mine site within the red circle. There are 2 areas of protected bogland beside the mine site, and they're to the west and south. And the drilling of the boreholes that's been proposed is nowhere near that, so it won't affect that and won't impact upon the bog. It's just existing agricultural land. What's being proposed then is the drilling of 3 boreholes. And the color location shows the grid references of where the holes will be drilled. And you can see there are 3 different locations. The length then is 350 meters, so they'll drill down 350 meters in a certain direction. The actual location of the holes themselves then, there's a drawing accompanying the notification, and that's on the left, and it shows the 3 purple dots. When you go into the table 1 with the grid references, that shows you the site-specific locations of the boreholes. And I've overlaid those onto an aerial flyover map just to get an idea of where the 3 holes will be drilled. So that's the purple dots on the right-hand side on the aerial image. Again, just using the grid references and overlaying those onto the maps. There are neighbours in the locality of the site. So 37 Aki Road is about 120 metres to the right-hand side of the nearest borehole. And there's another property then, 40 Falski Road, which is about 200 metres to the south, and other properties then further away to the west. Drilling then will be 7 to 7 on weekdays, 7 to 1 on a Saturday, no drilling on a Sunday. So standard sort of issues with previous borehole drilling. So members, to say what's before you today is a notification of the intention to drill boreholes using permitted development rights. So it's not a planning application. The council can, if they want, issue a direction restricting permitted development rights. And what that does then is it means that the applicant has to apply for planning permission for the drilling of the boreholes. You can see there the legislation allows the council to issue a direction if it's satisfied that it is expedient for a number of reasons to issue a direction. And there are 4 bullet points, there are 4 criteria. Those criteria are outlined in the report, and there's an assessment made against each of those. In terms of A, the site's not in any of those areas, so it's not a conservation area, A and B or anything like that. In terms of B, there's no other boreholes being drilled. The site is outside of the mine, and there's no other sort of nuisances in the area. And the drilling of the 3 holes would not be considered to cause serious detriment to the amenity of the area. It won't affect the setting of a listed building because they're well away from the site, and it won't constitute a serious nuisance to inhabitants of nearby houses, and there's no hospitals or schools nearby. And finally, it will not endanger aircraft using any airport, so there's no issue there. So the recommendation then of officers is not to issue a direction for the reasons listed within the report.
Okay, thank you, Darren. And we have speaking rights from Dr. Sarah Coulter, Chief Geologist, and Rowan Conway, General Manager of the Galantis Gold Corporation. If you want to come forward and use these 2 seats at the end here. Okay. All right. You have 10 minutes, and you can divide that up amongst yourselves, whichever way you want.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Our intention here is not to talk for too long. It's really just introduce yourselves, and Sarah's going to explain a little bit about the process, and then basically give you an opportunity to ask any questions that you feel are pertinent when we have the opportunity to answer them. See some new faces before. I did meet with Omagh District Council way back when. I recognise some of the faces here from that. We are still very keen to meet with the Fermanagh Omagh District Council, and we're currently waiting on a date. I think there was a vote taken to accept an invitation or extend an invitation to ourselves to meet with the full council, and we're still keen to do that at some stage. I've been with the Galantis Group for 16 years, working on the Cavanagh project in Omagh. We've had our fair share of challenges during that time. I feel, provided a very good support to local businesses. We try and, where possible, use local companies for the majority of our supplies within the business. My colleague, Dr. Sarah Coulter, is going to talk to you a little bit on this particular application. Sarah as well, we're going to call her nearly native to her own now at this stage. Sarah's been with the company now for over 13 years. She lives in Cookstown and has a family there. And she may share some knowledge that some of the rest of you do. She does a little bit of farming, or the family does a little bit of farming in Cookstown, and she assures me she knows the difference from the front end and the back end of a sheep.
Okay.
So we'll let Sarah say a few words.
Right. Thanks, Ronan, and thank you all for the opportunity to be present today and to speak at this meeting. I understand that the members have had some queries about the process of exploration drilling in the past, especially with consideration to the aquatic environment and noise generation. And so Ronan and I are simply here to take your questions today. But before we do that, I just want to emphasize that the proposed drilling process under this notification is the same that we have carried out previously under permitted development during other drilling programs, albeit a smaller number of holes this time around. As you know, there are only 3 in this notification. So a few key features of the process. Firstly, we're going to be operating a closed loop system. And this means that we're going to be using clean water, and we're going to recirculate this, and it will be completely contained within the system. So there won't be leakage to the environment. And all of our drill cuttings and the drill fluids will be retained and then sent to a licensed waste facility. At the end of drilling, we're going to plug the holes, and we're going to do that with a Van Ruth plug, which is a standard procedure in the drilling process. And this will seal the holes at bedrock. We'll be using an industry standard CE approved track mounted rig, and we'll also erect sound barriers around this to really reduce the noise. The holes are situated over 100 metres from the Botera Upper Road, and there's good access via a stony track to the sites. As with the last programme, we intend to keep the council up to date with when we're going to be starting the drilling, but also when we move from one drill pad to the next. We'll also be able to carry out spot checks on the noise levels using our mobile noise monitor. And if that's information that the council would like to have, then we can supply that as part of our ongoing updates. Also, a representation of the council members are welcome to come and visit the drill sites at any stage so that you can see the setup for yourselves. Okay, so now we'll just invite any questions that you might have.
Okay, thank you. So have we any members wishing to ask questions? All right. Councillor Campbell.
You, Chairman, and you mentioned efforts to reduce the impact of noise. I just want to check, has there been any engagement with the nearest residents in the area? I think there's 2 in particular are closest, but obviously there's more beyond that maybe. But has there been any engagement in that, or what sort of noise should residents expect? I know it's for a period of 16 weeks, I think. But how significant will the noise be? And I think possibly other members might have a view, but the sharing of information with council, I think I would be concerned around the noise impact, certainly. And I just wanted to know what engagement you had with the residents. Thanks, Chair.
Sorry, hold on a second, sir. Okay, if you can just lean forward a wee bit, our mics aren't very good at picking up,
Okay.
and some of the members might be hard to hear.
So with the sound barriers erected, the noise levels will be no more than 50 decibels over 100 metres from the drill rig. And the houses that we're talking about are beyond 100 metres from the rig. Yeah, and 50 decibels is, that's background noise, really. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. You want to come in there, Ron?
Okay. If I could just chip in there, as Sarah said, and to put that in reality terms, the machinery that's actually been used, it's a diesel engine enclosed in a soundproof containment. When you're down to that sort of below 50, our operating limit on site is 78 decibels for normal operations. So it's kind of like a tractor taking over at low rev. And it's the drill bit itself, there's no real vibration or anything comes off that. It really is very limited in noise. You'll not notice any difference in a tractor 2 fields away, do you know what I mean?
Okay, thank you. Next, Councillor McGrath.
Thank you, Chair. It's just, I've seen a borehole for water being drilled down 300 foot. Is there any comparison with what you are doing for a borehole or going down? Is there any difference in noise or depth?
So,
The depth, if you're saying 300 feet, it's in and around ours. It'll probably be a bit deeper than that. In terms of size, ours would be significantly smaller generally, and I don't know what particular sort of water borehole you're talking about, but generally they would be larger because you're trying to drill a hole that's large enough to collect water and then hold the pump to extract the water from that. So a borehole for water would be substantially bigger and require substantially bigger equipment, obviously, then to drive the drill to bore that hole. So it would be much less impact than a borehole for water.
thank you. Then we go to Councillor McCann.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Ronan. And Sarah, you're very welcome to the committee, and it's good to have you in. I suppose you know mining and mineral exploration in this area is controversial. It can be controversial, and it has been controversial. And it's right, I suppose, that this council and this plan committee does have almost like I know these boreholes would have been normally permitted development. You just get them and that's it. But it's good to come into the plan committee so we can see what's happening, I suppose. And it's kind of fun off in Glenn's question, Councillor Campbell's question. He asked about any engagement with residents. Now, I suppose at this particular stage of an application, there wouldn't be any formal engagement with residents in terms of what you're doing at this stage. But I'm just wondering, what sort of relationship would you have normally with the local residents? Is there any ongoing consultation? Do you just consult them about this sort of application at an early stage? Or what is the general relationships with your neighbours out there?
Right, sir. I'll have to turn you around.
The family that own the land that we're talking about, this time we have drilled from their land in the past, and we have a pretty good relationship. In fact, I was out yesterday looking for one of the farmer's cows that he'd lost. So, we have a good sort of ongoing communication. We don't foresee it being an issue.
Okay, thank you, sir.
If I could just...
Yeah, I'll just turn your light on there.
No, just to read what Sarah was saying, that's the neighbours who are there, we do generally have a very good relationship. There's one or two residents in the local area who historically would be opposed to anything gold mining. And that's their own personal beliefs, and it's kind of always been that way. They're far removed from this particular drill hole, probably over a mile away. And even with that, one of them in particular, we would, although we don't agree on our views of mining and exploration, I would have to say I have a very good relationship with. would talk to him at least 2 or 3 times a month when I meet him on the road. Sometimes you can get bad press and 1 or 2 people making a lot of noise that isn't really representative of what's happening on the ground. And I would have to say, thankfully, in Cavanagh, you know, with those neighbours, one of the neighbours is the landowner. The other one of the neighbours, I've met personally on several occasions. He's a retired gentleman. He likes to keep himself to himself, but he has on occasion come up to the site to visit, just to see what's happening and pass a while of a day or whatever, you know. So, and that is important to us. We do like to keep good relationships with our neighbours. And a few times I've suggested trying to get a neighbourhood committee sorted out so that we can formalise this process and say, look, you know, we'll meet every month or every 2 months. You can tell us any issues that you have, you know, and we'll have a forum there for exchange. I'm around 4 or 5 of them. They're all farmers, and every one of them had the same opinion. Is like, look, we don't want to be part of any committees. We don't, like, if we have a problem, we come and see you. And they've always done that. And they do come and see us. And generally the problem is there's a tractor with a silage cutter and a trailer bogged in a field, and we've nothing to get it out. Have you any equipment that you could come and help us out? One of them had a delivery lorry, went over a hedge, and they come up to see would we go down and help with the, you know, with one of the big heavy shovels. So it's a sort of an informal relationship, but it's very much there, and it's very much in existence, that relationship with our neighbours.
Okay. Thank you, Ronan. And Councillor Thomas O'Reilly.
Thank you, Chair. And Ronan and Sarah, you're very welcome. That's good to know that there's an ongoing relationship, that if we get a tractor stuck, that we can give you a shout. We're just the other about 30 miles away, but it's a good offer to have on the table. No, can you talk to me a little bit about, so these are our exploration boreholes outside of really the normal drilling or the area that you've worked on to date. Is this an expansion then possibly of the mine? Where in relation to the underground distance out there, is this then going to extend the mine as such? Can you give us a bit of a context of that? And on the event that these boreholes prove positive, how far out do you intend to continue to extend? You know, where is the scope? Do you follow the vein, no matter where it leads to? Is that the ultimate? And is that all underground work, or does that ever come to the surface where we'd have open parts of a mine there at all? So just to give me some context of where these new boreholes would eventually sort of lead to. Thank you.
Okay, give me a second. There you go, sir.
Okay, so it's approximately 200 metres north of the current mine site where we propose to drill. And the reason for doing that is because we want to expand the resource. We want to find out how the vein, the gold vein, develops to the north. We have a theory that the rock which hosts the vein well, which is where we find wide sections of the mineralization on the mine site, plunges to the north. And there hasn't been any exploration to identify where the vein continues at depth to the north. So that's the strategy. It's really with a view to expanding the resource and understanding how far the vein continues. So there wouldn't be an expectation that this would become an open pit because this is a deeper section, and it would be a more natural thing to extend from underground in that situation.
Chair, that's to the north.
Sorry, hold on a second. There you go, Thomas.
Yeah, that's to the north. The other Is there an expectation of going east, west, or south?
No, we expect the vein to be better developed to the north.
Okay,
I can,
sorry.
yeah, no, Councillor Reddy, I think I get a feel of where your question, your concern is, or the direction it's going. To answer directly in terms of expansion of the mine, this is very early stage exploration. It's really just, as Sarah said, to try and identify, to get a better understanding of the vein structure, of the location, offsite. In the longer term, could it lead to mine expansion? Possibly. I'm going to be honest and say, yeah, possibly. We're looking to increase the resource. But in terms of today's application and the consideration for today, it's far removed from that, and it certainly can't be done without a new planning consent. So if there ever was at a future time any proposed movement or extension of the mine, it would have to come before the council by way of a full planning consent in the future. It can't be done within the existing consent. Those boundaries are very firmly set on the existing consent. To answer another question, which you kind of alluded to there, in terms of open pit. Look, personally, my belief, I've worked in the industry 15, 16 years here. Personally, if you ask me, I don't believe you'll ever see an open pit for mining in this jurisdiction approved. I'm not a planning expert, I'm not a planning consultant. That's just a personal belief. I think open pit mining in this jurisdiction is probably a thing of the past.
Okay, thank you, Ron. Thank you. And Councillor Earl Thompson.
Thank you very much, Chair, and very welcome, Sarah Rowland, to the Planning Committee. I suppose, and thanks for the answer so far and some very relevant questions here. Just another question that people be asking us, just from the home area, really. Your current employees, how many current employees would you have? And where would they, what sort of an area would they come from? That's one of the questions that be asked of us quite regularly.
Currently on site, we have 16 employees. The furthest away there's a few Castlederg, a few Strabane, Cookstown, a lot of us in Oma, Trillick. The mine manager, lives in Trillick. He bought a house there a number of years ago. That sort of catchment area is generally where the bulk of ours were. We, up to a number of years ago, would have had a higher level of employees. And we did have employees that were ex-Lachine. Lachine's a mine way down near the very south of Ireland. And it closed down a number of years ago. We did have some ex-Lachine miners coming up. And we brought a lot of young lads from the Oma and surrounding area into the business, very, very keen to try and get them trained up and try and get a local skilled workforce. We did bring in our own training program, providing a lot of training for these guys. We did have problems with retention. A lot of these young people now, when they get 6 months, a year of experience behind them, they were just going straight for Australia. They had enough experience behind them at that stage that they were being offered positions in mines in Australia for absolutely crazy money. But it's always been our intention to try, it's to our benefit, to be honest, to keep the workforce as local as possible. But ideally what you want is young people in the area employed who are going to be there for their working life and raise families in the area and have ties and links to the area. That's our optimum.
Okay, thank you. Any Councillor Alan Rainey?
Well, thank you, Chair, and welcome to our guests here. I suppose the question, one of my questions, you have answered it there when Councillor Thompson posed the question on the local employment. When, in terms of the borehole, is it plumb or is it at an angle? You know, that's something that I discovered more recently. In terms of boring for a well, there's plumb, but I have a suspicion, not a suspicion, but someone that this here has done it at an angle. Maybe you would elaborate a little on that.
Okay, so the 3 holes will be approximately 350 meters, and they will be drilled at 60 degrees.
60 degrees, and different direction.
They will all be directed to the west, 270 degrees.
There you
Okay.
go. Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'm not seeing anybody else indicating, so thank you very much. Oh, sorry, Bern, you were in before, but at the end again.
Thank you, Chair. No, just the time frame, 16 weeks to drill the 3 holes. You know, was that, would it take 16 weeks or obviously it will, you know, but.
If everything runs smoothly, it should take approximately 13 weeks.
Okay. Right. Okay, so thank you, Sarah and Ronan. If you want to address back, there's no further questions for you, and your input's finished. So thank you very much, and we'll get back to the committee. Okay, thank you. Okay, so back over to you again, Darren. So, this is the start, yeah.
Let's see. Okay, members, really, there's nothing further to add from the presentation and from the discussion. I just remind members that what's before you today is a notification of intended borehole drilling. So that's what your decision is on today, whether or not to issue a direction to say, no, you can't drill these, you need to make a planning application. So that's what's before you. Anything else in relation to the findings of the boreholes and potential future operations are all not relevant today. If there's an application or if there's any mining wants to go ahead in the future, needs planning permission, allowed to go to the Department of Infrastructure as a reasonably significant application, or will come before the council. So one way or another, the council will have an opportunity to comment and be involved in that process. But set that all aside for today. What's before you is this notification. In terms of the notification and some of the issues raised, members, the consultee comments are all in there. Environmental Health have been consulted and they have reviewed the notification and looked at the information, including the borehole machinery, and are aware of what's proposed. They're content and subject to the implementation of all noise mitigation measures. They consider that noise impact from the proposal will be within industry limits. So Environmental Health are content about the impact from noise. So as I say, members, your decision today is whether you want to issue a direction for any of the reasons within criteria A to D.
Okay. Councillor McCann.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Darren. I suppose the only option, if we were minded to issue a direction, would be under option C. The development would constitute a serious nuisance to the inhabitants of a nearby residential building, hospital or school. So Sarah has advised us that very low decibels, 50 decibels. So that's really not going to be a factor. I suppose the question I want to ask is, in the previous drill hole operations that were granted under permitted developments, did any issues arise for this council in terms of breaches of terms or excess noise or complaints? Maybe comment on that, Chair.
So the Council Planning Department hasn't received any complaints in relation to the noise from the drilling of boreholes. The previous borehole notifications were largely in the mine site. So the mine, actually the shape and size of the mine constrained the noise. So there wasn't really any impact on the neighbours. This is the first one really that we've had that's outside the mine site. In relation to that, the notification has the information on the likely noise limits. We've consulted Environmental Health through the experts on this, and they've given the Council Planning Department advice that they're content. It'll be within the noise limits. There's mitigation also being applied to reduce that even further. If there is a complaint about noise from this, Environmental Health still have their statutory responsibilities and rules, and they can investigate this and pursue this if they want to separately. But as I say, they're content that if the applicant does what they're proposing to do, using the machinery they're proposing to do, it's within industry guidelines and there'll be no issues.
Chair, on the back of that, I'm happy to make a proposal that we go with the officer's recommendation not to issue direction. And just to make the point that I suppose if we were to issue direction, there's very clear stipulations as to what threshold we must meet, and we don't think we meet any of them based on the information that has been provided by the applicant. I suppose it's just, I'd be keen that the council do keep an eye, obviously, as work progresses, that there's no issues arise in terms of noise and that any complaints are dealt with quickly as possible.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thanks, Darren, for that. And I'm prepared to second the recommendation. I think Councillor McCann has outlined the pertinent points there, and I'm prepared to second the recommendation as listed. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. I'm not seeing anybody else indicating. So you've heard the proposal to go with the officer's recommendations. So seconded. Is anybody an objection to that? Okay, so we'll take that as unanimous that the committee has gone with that. So back to you, Darren.
Yeah, just to confirm that the recommendation of officers was not to issue direction. Members have agreed with that recommendation, so a direction will not be issued. Just in relation to the point raised by Councillor McCann, officers will go out just to visit the works when they start the drilling programme to check everything's in accordance with the notification. If it's not, then it's not permitted development. They have to come in with the planning application, and they're well aware of that. So I wouldn't expect them to do anything different. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Now we go on to Aaron, if you like to leave, please. Or wish to leave. Okay, so now we have application number 1, which is LA 10-23-2300F, and it's against back to Darren.
Okay, members, so the application number 1 in paper B, LA 10-2023-2300. It's a full application by B. McGrath for a new entrance and access laneway to serve an existing agricultural business, a poultry business and a dwelling. The location then is immediately adjacent to 56A Gortnagarn Road in Omagh, and the recommendation is to approve planning permission for the reasons listed in the report and subject to 7 conditions. I'll just take members through some of the details. So the application site then is on the screen, and you can see the two yellow stars that are on the drawing. Each star really is the access point. So the top star, the northern star, if you want to call it that, that comes off the existing laneway which serves the applicant's business and houses. It'll then run across the new laneway, will run across the fields and then exit out onto Gortnagarn Road at the yellow star at the bottom of the slide. So you can see the extent of the new laneway coming across the fields. So just to set the scene here, the applicant then and the business is up at the yellow star. Currently they come down the laneway along the red line. And there are issues in relation to that. So they're proposing then sorry, that's the laneway there that you can see they come out on the Gortnagarn Road. So what they're proposing to do is to create a new laneway and come across the field in the area where the green line is, approximately the green line and the position of that green arrow. Looking then on the location map and the Google Street View image. So this is a very rough guide, members, of what is proposed. So there'll be a new access onto the public road and coming out. It'll come in straight in off the public road, then go left over towards that shed, and then turn right again over towards the farmhouse and the farm business across the fields. The impact upon the immediate neighbours is an important consideration, members, and there is one representation from a neighbour raising issue with how this will impact on them, and that's included within the report. The orientation of the laneway, though, is designed that vehicles coming along there will sweep up north towards the existing farm business and not come out directly opposite the house. So if you can imagine a vehicle coming along the laneway, the new laneway, it'll turn and then drive onto the existing laneway rather than approaching at a T-junction, stopping and facing the house. So the impact on the immediate neighbours, there will be an impact. Any new development in an area will have an impact on neighbours. However, this will not unacceptably affect their amenity from noise, headlights, or anything like that, general disturbance. Well, members, the recommendation then is to approve planning permission for the reasons listed in the report and subject to 7 conditions.
Thank you, Darren. We don't have any speaking rights on this one, so if anybody wants to direct any questions towards Darren. Stephen?
Thank you, Chair. No, I think that's all pretty well covered in the report. I'm happy to propose the recommendations.
And Councillor Robinson?
I'm happy to second that.
Okay, thank you. So you've heard the recommendations proposed and seconded. Is there anybody in objection to that? No, so we'll take that as a unanimous decision. Back to you, Darren.
Okay, members, so application number 1, LA 10, 2023-2300. The recommendation of officers was to approve planning permission, subject to 7 conditions. Members have granted planning permission, subject to those conditions.
Okay. Thank you. David, do you want to tell Bernard to come in? Thank you. Okay. Expect that to be as quick. Will we just continue on?
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're at plan application number 2, and it's LA 10 2022-0583F. And again, back to Darren.
Okay, so application number 2, LA 10 2022-0583. It's a full application by David Robert Mahan Limited for housing development of 14 houses with associated road and landscaping. The location then is lands adjacent to and south of Railway Park, Mantling Road and Kesh. And the recommendation of officers is to approve planning permission for the reasons listed within the report and subject to 16 conditions. Just to provide members with an update, the council has received a draft legal agreement relating to the provision of the affordable housing, and that has been forwarded on to legal services, who have sent it on to ourselves to review. That looks as though it will be acceptable, and subject to the recommendation today, if the application is approved, we'll proceed on with that, and that'll resolve that issue. So the details of these application then, members. So it's an application for housing. It's inside the settlement limits of Kesh. The site location is on the screen. You can see outlined in red with the annotated note there beside it. There are a number of houses nearby. So you have Railway Park immediately to the north. You have a waterway along the eastern side, and then other houses and buildings nearby. So what's proposed then is, you can see the Mantling Road at the top of the slide with the green arrow. A new access will be created then coming in off the road and head up towards the turning head, traditional turning head at the end. And the houses then orientated to run along each side of the road. There's an area of green space then along the river, which has been retained and is kept free from development. It relates to an area of surface of flooding, so that'll not be developed on. Houses then, you can see it's a mix of semi-detached houses. 2 of them will be affordable housing, and that's the ones in red. And as I say, that'll be facilitated and delivered by a legal agreement separately. That'll accompany the application. House types then are typical 2-story semi-detached houses commonly found in the area and then fit in well with Kesh, so no great issues there. As I say, there is a water course along the eastern side of the site, and the applicant has included information on the flood risk from that area and the floodplain that affects the site. So that's shown in blue with an additional area of land retained just to ensure there's no impact on any neighbours. Obviously, members, these applications more and more important is the impact on the neighbours that may be beside the site. So we have Railway close to the north, and you have a number of properties there. There are 2 properties, number 8 and 9, that immediately back onto this site. So the impact of these new houses upon them is an important material consideration for planning officers. You can see there's the new houses will back on to those existing properties, so it's back to back. And there's a good separation distance along the plots, so 6, 5, 4, 3 and 2 have a good separation distance. Number 1 though is slightly closer than the other properties. However, the views from number 1, plot number 1 with the yellow star over the house number 8, which is the closest property, the views there are screened somewhat by the existing garage at the side of number 8. So although it is closer to the property, there's no real degree of unacceptable overlooking that you wouldn't find uncommon in an urban area. And number 8 will still have a reasonable degree of privacy and amenity at their house. So members, the recommendation is to approve planning permission for the reasons listed within the report and subject to 16 conditions.
Thank you, Darren. Again, there's no speaking rights on this one. So if you have any questions, or so Councillor Earl Thompson.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks to Darren for the report. Judging by what you've said there, Darren, in the 16 conditions, as you've elaborated on, I'm happy to propose a recommendation, including the conditions.
Okay. Thank you, Earl. And Stephen.
Yeah, happy to second. It looks to be a high quality scheme fitting into the cache area. So listen, I'm happy to second the recommendations and agree with the 16 conditions attached. So
Yeah, thank you. I can remember that when it was waste grind. So it's interesting to have seen how it has come on in the last 20 years. It's now going to be fit for some suitable housing. So is there anybody opposed to the recommendation, the proposal to go with the recommendation? No, so we take that as unanimous, so pass back to Darren.
Okay, members, so application number 2, LA 10 2022-0583, the full application. The recommendation of officers was to approve planning permission. Members have granted planning permission and subject to those conditions listed within the report.
Thank you, Darren. We'll just wait for David to come back in. Is he there yet? Okay. There he is. Okay. Next, we're going to application number 3, LA 10 2024-0059F. And again, we're back to Darren.
Okay, so application number 3, LA 10 2024-0059. It's a full application by Mitten and for the reprofiling of agricultural land through infilling with inert overburden material from the adjoining Rockfield quarry. It is part retrospective in that some works have commenced prior to the decision on the application. However, the proposal is before you today. The inert overburden then will be levelled with topsoil and seeded with grass for the purposes of land improvement. So the recommendation of officers is to approve planning permission for the reasons listed within the report and subject to the 5 conditions. So members, I'm sure you're familiar with the location of Rockfield Quarry. So you've Lisnaskea and then you head out southeast from Lisnaskea and takes you to the quarry. At the moment, there's an existing hard rock quarry which is actively mining at the site. You'll note from the report, as part of the mining activities, they're experiencing a greater degree of waste material of overburden as part of the extraction process. So the proposal then is to move that off-site and it'll be deposited then on the area in red. You can see at the bottom of the slide with the yellow star. So the land will be ultimately redeveloped with this inert material that'll be dumped on the site and levelled and graded to create the flat platform. That land then will be covered in topsoil and reseeded. And so the slide on the screen, members, give you an idea of the cross sections of what is proposed. So you can see the existing profile is the brown land. The new material then, there's a considerable amount of it, but it's shown in the pink area. So the pink is the infill material. So there is a considerable amount. The land will be regraded, as I say, to create a smooth surface on the top. Around the edges then there will be a slope on the land, and that'll allow it to be regraded down to fit into the surrounding boundary hedges and topography. The scheme then will be part of an overall restoration for the wider mine when it's completed and the reserves are exhausted. and you can see then it'll fit in well with it without impacting on the character of the area or any neighbours, etc. So the recommendation then, members, is to approve planning permission for the reasons listed within the report and subject to the 5 conditions.
Thank you, Darren. And again, there's nobody with speaking rights on this one, so anybody any questions for Darren? Councillor Paul Robinson.
Chair, I'm happy to go with the recommendation of the planners.
Okay.
The 5 conditions.
Thank you, Paul. And Councillor Stephen McCann.
Thanks, Chair, and happy to second. Just a quick question, I suppose, in relation to this application and the next one. I'm just wondering, why are they coming into the Plan Committee? Are they, I know maybe, have they been delegated or before, or I just wonder why they're appearing in this section of the meeting and not dealt with under delegated authority, Darren? Probably a straightforward rationale, but I'm just wondering what it is.
It's a major application.
Major
Because the
application.
size of the application site means it has to come.
No, that's 100%.
Okay. So you've heard that the recommendation of the officers has been proposed and seconded. Is anybody opposed? And I'm not. Everybody's happy. So that's again unanimous. And it's back to you, Darren.
Members, so application number 3, LA 10 2024 0059. The recommendation of officers was to approve planning permission. Members have granted planning permission for the reasons listed within the report and subject to those conditions listed.
Okay, thank you, Darren. Next, we go to application number 4, LA 10 2023 15370. And again, that's yourself, Darren.
Yeah. So application number 4 then, members, LA 10 2023 1537. So it's an outline application by S Devine for a residential development consisting of 27 detached and semi-detached houses along with an access road, parking, landscaping, open space and improvements to Cushwash Road and associated site works. The location then, members, you can see the location in detail within the report, and I'll go through it on the screen. It's along the Cushwash Road in Lisnaskea. The recommendation then is to approve planning permission for the reasons listed within the report and subject to 20 conditions. Just in relation to those conditions, members, condition 3. Yes, this is an outline application, so the final details of the access and arrangements, etc., will all be submitted as reserved matters. Condition 3 sets out what those reserved matters should be, and there's a variety of bullet points. One of those states that the Cushwash Road should be widened to 6 metres minimum with a 2 metre wide footway on either side. Roads are now clarified with ourselves that there's not a footway required on either side. It's only on the site frontage, which would make sense, to be honest. So the condition 3 then would be amended, subject to members' agreement, that it would say the 2 metre wide footway is only required across the site frontage. So I'll go through that in a second, members, but just update you on that. So the application site then, members, on the screen, you can see an aerial image with the site identified by the yellow star. It's inside the settlement limit of Lisnaskea and is not zoned for housing. It's whiteland. There was a former dwelling and former buildings on the site, and those have been demolished, and the lands are largely agricultural. The applicant does own and controls additional lands outside of the red line across the road, but these are not part of the application site and are not being taken forward as part of this application. The application only involves the lands on the left-hand side of the road. So as I say, members, what's proposed really is to develop the 2 fields identified with the yellow star and the area there where the old house was. There is a considerable slope on the topography of the field, so the high land on the left-hand side, with the land then sloping down towards the public road, and it curves around really in parallel with the orientation of the road. What's proposed then, members, is a quality residential development coming in off the public road with improvements along the Cushwash Road. A single point of access then coming in, and a line of houses then along the edge of the public road. Moving on up through the back of the development, there's another spine off, providing a row of semi-detached houses, and then you get to the higher land at the back, and you'll have a row of detached houses, all accessed along their own individual accesses onto the public road. There's a few features on the site which are important. These are a belt of trees along the middle of the plot, which would be the typical the field boundaries, existing field boundaries. And the layout does show those all to be retained and they'll be integrated as part of the development. So it'll be an attractive feature. As I say, members, there is a significant gradient on the site, and no doubt there will be extensive earthworks and regrading to provide the flat building platforms. However, the plans do show that that is being done sensitively, and there's no real need for substantial or large supporting retaining structures. So there will be some retaining structures at the back gardens, but they won't be unduly or unsightly, etc., and be well screened behind the houses. Houses themselves is a typical mix of houses throughout the development, and it's welcomed. There's a variety of buildings there, semi-detached, detached, etc. So members, the recommendation then is to approve planning permission for the reasons listed within the report and subject to 20 conditions, with that condition amended, as I say, just to relate to the improvement to the Cushwash roads and the provision of the footpath across the site frontage.
Okay, thank you, Darren. And we have Dermot Monaghan, agent, who's for the applicant. So if you want to come forward, Dermot. Thank you, Dermot. You have a maximum of 10 minutes. You don't have to use it all, but you do have it there. And just turn your mic on if you're happy to go.
Members, thanks very much for the opportunity of addressing you today. I'm really here just to endorse Darren's report. It's a very comprehensive report. It sets out all of the planning issues clearly. This will be a quality residential development of 27 units that will help to satisfy housing need. And I'm really here to see if you have any queries on behalf of the applicant, Seamus Devine. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you, Dermot. That's very concise and to the point. Have we any questions for Dermot? Not seeing anybody indicating. So if you want to address back, Dermot, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Back to Darren again.
Members have nothing further to add. If any questions, happy to take any questions.
Okay, members. Stephen, you've been kept busy, I think. Oh, me too.
Yeah, happy to propose the recommendations, Chairman.
Thank you, Stephen. And Tommy?
Currently happy to second the proposal.
Okay. You've heard, and seeing nobody else indicating, you've heard the recommendations of the officers proposed and seconded. Is there anybody against that? Not seeing anybody indicating, so that's unanimous. So back to you, Darren.
So application 4, LA 10, 2023, 1537. Recommendation of officers is to approve planning permission. Members have granted planning permission, subject to 20 conditions and the amendment of the condition relating to the footpath link. Just to advise members, the legal agreement accompanying the application will go forward with lead services, legal services here, and we'll take that forward in conjunction with the application.
Thank you, Darren. Okay, so now we're on to agenda item 6, I think. So, Seamus, that's you in the hot seat. Seamus, if you just turn your mic on. Yeah.
Members, so first application up on paper C is application number 1, LA 10, 2023, 2470. It's an extension to a dwelling and curtilage and a domestic store to the rear. The location is 255 Clannabogan Road, Dromore, and the recommendation is to refuse planning permission. It's important to note at this stage that Councillor or MLA Thomas Buchanan was to speak on this application, but he has indicated that he's not available. So the application site, as you can see on the slide, is identified in red. The proposal is to include an extension to the dwelling to the side, with an extension to the curtilage to the rear of the dwelling, which can be seen here in the green dotted area, and the proposed store is to be located in this extended area. The store proposed, it's important, I suppose, at this stage to note that the application includes the extension to the dwelling and no objection or concerns are listed in relation to that aspect of the development. The concerns arise from the location of the proposed store. The store building can be seen on the current slide there. It's a large building with 2 roller shutter doors, 1 pedestrian door in the centre, a couple of windows to the rear. And that's the drawing showing the extension to the dwelling. So this image here, photograph taken along the Kildrum Road, you can see identified by the yellow star, the location, the approximate location of where the photograph was taken from. This shows the house fronting Kildrum Road. The proposed store is to go in behind, or located approximately where the blue star is indicating. This photograph is taken from the rear of number 50 Kildrum Road, showing the site of the proposed store. It's like a panoramic view. The large 3 in the image to the right is the store building will be to the front of that and facing towards then the gable end towards the rear of this property where the picture was taken or where the photograph was taken. We have approximate distances on here. So what we're looking at is 7 meters from the rear boundary or the rear wall of the house at 50 Kildrum Road to the rear boundary of the property. You then have approximately 13.5 meters to the gable wall of the proposed store. This photograph is taken from the location identified by the yellow star below. It shows the property to the left, dwelling and garage, 50 Kildrum Road. The proposed store site then is to the right-hand side of both photographs. This is taken from a viewpoint looking up into the rear of where the store building is to be located. Again, number 50 is located to the left, the host dwelling located to the right, and the store building is proposed to be in the centre of the shot, basically. This photograph is taken from on up the Clannabogan Road, so you're heading towards Dromore. The dwellings are on the right-hand side. The blue arrow again indicating the approximate location of the proposed store building. It gives you an idea of the impact this building will have, if approved, on the ability of number 50 to enjoy residential amenity. So Council's policy does indicate that it will not support development proposals where they would unacceptably affect the amenities or the residential amenity of nearby properties. And again, visual amenity ought to be protected in the public interest, but they also include overlooking, loss of privacy, dominance, or overshadowing. The issue that officers have identified with this proposal is the potential impact for dominance on the rear amenity area of number 50 Kildrum Road if this proposed store were to be built where proposed. The policy clarification again goes on to identify issues that would render proposals unacceptable, and that being unacceptably affect amenities. And again, the yardsticks against which development proposals will be measured include good neighbourliness and fairness. And the issue here is, as I'll go on to, the potential for other locations for this proposed store, and the fact that they weren't, I suppose, included or assessed, or a reason provided as to why the shed had to go or the store building had to go where it is proposed. This image is taken from, again, as the yellow star identifies, closer to Dromore, looking back towards the site. A better view then closer up just at the junction of the Kildrum and Clannabogan Roads, and we can see an area of ground here that is within the red outline of the site, indicating that it is owned or controlled by the applicant. And it is officer's opinion that a store building would be better suited in here, in this location. It would still read, if the curtilage were extended to include this, it would read with the host house, while it would be near to the number 50 Kildrum Road, the third party property, wouldn't have the same impacts on it. That's a closer view of this portion of land that's been discussed. So, members, for the reasons listed within the report and in line with the wording of the transitional arrangements in the 2015 LDP regulations when reading both the DDP and the plan strategy together, it's considered the proposal does not accord with the LDP for the reasons stated. There are no other material considerations to indicate that it should be approved contrary to the LDP. It is recommended, pardon me, therefore, that the application be refused for the following reason. The proposal is contrary to Strategic Policy SP01, Policy DE01 General Amenity Requirements, and HOU 5 Shaping Our Houses and Homes, in that it would, if permitted, unacceptably affect the amenity of the dwelling to the immediate west by reason of dominance and does not respect the neighbouring property. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Seamus. And we have Paul Bradley, agent for the applicant. Thank you, Paul. Again, you've a maximum of 10 minutes. Once you're happy to go. Speak into the mic.
That all right? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks again, committee, for calling in this application for further consideration. This application is for an extension of a dwelling and the creation of a domestic garage, as Seamus has laid out. The planning report states clearly that there are no issues with the extension, and therefore I'll only discuss the store to the rear. There is only one refusal recommendation to this application. It states that the proposal is contrary to policy as it would affect the amenity of the neighbours to the west by reason of dominance. When the committee considers the report before you, there are 9 pages of report in total, and out of that there's only one paragraph that actually states there's anything negative about the application and the new store. I would refer the committee to page 9 under the new storage building heading within the committee report. Within this paragraph, the plan report makes the case that the proposal fails to meet policy as follows. Due to the existing landform at this site rising in a northerly direction, and number 50 Kildrum Road lies at a lower level than the proposed site, than the proposed store. It then goes on to state that as a result of the difference in levels between both sites and the size and scale of the proposed store, along with the orientation of the adjacent dwelling, the new store will have an unacceptable effect on the amenity of the dwelling by reason of dominance. The view from the rear window would be dominated by a large blank gable wall. This is according to the report. Now, this one paragraph represents a slightly flawed assessment of our proposal. On our original proposal, we had a slightly larger store with a gable window. We reduced the overall size by over 2 metres and removed the gable window to respect the neighbours' comments on the file. More importantly, the original proposal and the one before the committee now is that although the land rises at the store location, we have always indicated that the floor level of the dwelling would only be 1 metre higher than the applicant's dwelling at number 255. And to be fair to the planning assessment at the time, we had not originally submitted levels of the neighbour's dwelling at number 50, but we've now since provided that, and it's on the portal, it's been submitted, and we've provided full levels, and the site shows our proposed store, right, although it's higher than our proposal, it is actually only 100 mil higher than the house at number 50 that they say we're affecting their amenity. So while the site's sloping, we're levelling that off. If you're in the construction industry and you have a sloping site, you don't put it at the highest point of the field. You go to the midpoint and you flatten that out and put your store on. So our store is sitting level with the house at number 50, not higher. That's where I'm saying there's a flaw in how they've described the dominance. So based on that there, the ridge height as well, when you're sitting this in, and I've submitted a section through the site, which hasn't been put on the presentation here, but it's on the portal, showing how this is all working and the juxtaposition between the two and how it is running through level. But the actual ridge height of our proposal is nearly a foot lower than, so, thanks Seamus for bringing that up, or whoever brought it up. You can see the section there. The ridge level on our proposal is actually 250 to 300 mil lower than what the house next door, number 50, actually is. So this site layout with the updated levels and showing that section, you know, regards to dominance within the local development plan, the description of dominance is located generally within policy justification for extensions. And again, I'll quote from the policy under dominance 1.30 from the appendix. Dominance is the extent to which a new development adversely impinges on the immediate aspect or outlook from an adjoining property, not an adjacent property. You should be joined to it. Neighbouring occupiers should not be adversely affected by a sense of being hemmed in by an extension. This is not an extension. This can result from the construction of a large blank wall. And that's out of the dominance description. The planners have lifted that, dropped it in the report, but it's mainly talking about extensions, not a new build store in the countryside. Dominance can be increased when the neighbouring property is at a lower ground level to the development. It is very clear from the description on dominance that it deals mostly with extensions. Our proposal is not an extension, it's not adjoining, and it is also not at a higher level. It talks about being hemmed in by an extension and can result in the construction of a large blank wall. I have to emphasise that this wall that the planning report refers to is 20.5 metres away from the windows of number 50, the rear wall. So there's no possible way that something at 20.5 metres could hem in or create dominance at this distance. Now, before the meeting started, I've stepped out the length of this room. It's about 18.5 metres in the longest point. I'm another 2 metres beyond that. So how, if you're standing there and looking a further 2.5 metres back there, is that going to dominate a window back here? It's physically not happening when it comes to dominance. While the new LDP does not give specific dimensions on separation, they aren't actually covered in item number 2 just before separation distances within a housing development. They were a lot closer than my proposal. And the LDP doesn't set out dimensions, but I've been in front of this committee and sat in various meetings. It always states, and Creighton Places clarifies this and always has, in greenfield sites and low-density developments, good practice indicates that a separation distance of 20 metres or greater between opposing rear first-floor windows of new houses is generally accepted. Our store is further away than the recommended distance and has no windows, never mind first-floor windows. Furthermore, within the development, it butts private garden areas with existing properties. A separation distance greater than 20 will generally be appropriate to minimise overlooking, with a minimum of around 10 metres between the rear of new houses and a common boundary. Our blank gable wall with no windows is 13 metres from the common boundary. So again, we're meeting all the targets, all the recommendations than Creighton Places. I have to ask, how can our proposal be dominant when it is in excess of the accepted separation distances, is not higher than the adjacent properties, and has no windows? Under other material considerations at the rear of the report states that the store could be erected in the area to the west of number 255 on the lower lands. However, also in the appendices of the new local development plan, under garage and associated outbuildings 1.10, buildings within residential curtilage such as garages, sheds and greenhouses require care in siting and design. They should be subordinate in scale and similar in style, taking account of character, materials and the level of visibility. 1.11, garages or outbuildings wholly located in front gardens or those that extend in front of the established building line will generally be resisted as they can over-dominate the front of the property. So again, this suggestion that we have an alternative is against all advice that's given in the local development plan. If we were to take the garage and put it down at the lower land in the front, we're sitting along the main Omagh Dromore Road. If that wouldn't create a worse scenario than what we're currently doing, because the whole 8 pages of the plan report states that our store is actually integrating and very well and subsidiary in behind the existing dwelling, the way all good planning policy has always advised us. So they're going against their own advices and appendices of the new development plan to suggest putting it on the lower land. Finally, the refusal reason lists HOU 05 within it, but on page 7 and finishing on page 8 of the report, it clearly states that the proposal is considered to comply with policy HOU 5. Now, I don't know whether that's a typo and it should have said it doesn't, but it says very clearly in the report that it does comply with, so it shouldn't be on the refusal reason if that's the case. So there's some conflict on the reasons compared to the contents of the report. I've also stated that during discussions with the case officer throughout this file, that if the proposed store needed further reduction to make this work, our client was willing to accommodate that within reason. But again, we're before committee without any further opportunity to make a slight alteration that could have saved all this. They were also surprised that my flow level was the same as number 50 and didn't realise. They assumed we were putting it at the highest point of the field. We're clearly not and never have been from every document we've ever submitted. So in summary, our proposal flow level with the adjoining dwelling at number 50 is not higher up the slope. The ridge height is lower than number 50, is over 20 metres away from the rear windows at number 50. Recommended separation distances are in excess of what is required for good planning practice. There are no overlooking windows. While I would fully suggest that the committee accept my consideration of the planning report, our client is still willing to make a further reduction if it will help to push this over the line. However, careful reading of the report shows that the site has not been assessed correctly in accordance with the LDP policy. Thank you for your time and welcome any questions.
Yeah, I'll give you an extra 3 seconds there, but we'll not fall out with you. Any questions? Anthony?
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks for that.
Sorry, Anthony. It's turning.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks for that presentation. A lot of detail in it there. And I was just, we'll go back, you were saying there about, I worked on the building sites myself, so if we can have a fair idea of it. You said your leverage, you took from the middle height, you didn't go to the lowest point or the highest point, is that correct? And I see, I just looking at it, that there's a very low pitch on it, you have kept it as low as you can, it's very low there. And did you ever think of, maybe it would make no difference, like a lean-to roof on it, to keep it a bit lower? That's just 1 or 2 queries, John.
Okay. Yeah.
Again, we have no option, and we always say we will work with the planning department. If they have a suggestion that we can make this work, we never say no. We do want to be at the planning committee. So a phone call with us and the planners, we could negotiate this out a bit and reduce the size if need be. But bear in mind, the report clearly states that I'm meeting local development policy and all the recommended policies with this. I think there seems to be a misinterpretation in the assessment that we were putting it up on the height. We never were.
Thank you. Anybody else? Any questions? Okay, thank you. If you want to address back again, please.
Thanks, Doc.
And back to you, Seamus.
Thanks, Chair. I suppose just a few things to go over there from Paul's presentation. The difference in levels has been presented, I think, on Friday. We didn't have that evidence until then, when the papers were prepared and the reports were written. There's no consideration of alternative sites, as we have said. The windows, Paul has mentioned the fact that there's no windows in this gable, but the issue of dominance doesn't have to be in relation to a proposal with windows in it. It's the blank wall and the location of it immediately to the rear of this existing property. The clustering or the issue, I suppose, that Paul mentioned about being forward of a building line, there's room in that site that the officers have identified to position a building there that wouldn't be forward of the existing dwelling or the host dwelling. So I don't believe that it would be contrary to policy, and it would result in an overall clustering of the development. And I suppose it's important to note here that we're looking at this because officers believe that the location proposed and provided will have a significant impact or an adverse impact on that third-party dwelling. So the assumption that officers, or that Paul has indicated officers have, a lot of that is born out of the fact that levels weren't produced, and in any event, there's a more suitable location for this proposal within the application site and within the applicant's ownership. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Seamus? Stephen?
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Seamus. And thanks, Paul, for the presentation. There's a lot of information, I suppose, to try and get our heads around. on this one. So just in relation to the figures that Paul quoted under the creating spaces, there's no contradiction with them, Seamus, at all. You know, the 20.5 metres away is within or is in excess of the guidance, I suppose, in terms of overshadowing. So there's no conflict with that, I suppose. The ridge height being, I think Paul said the ridge height was lower. I should have actually clarified that with him before he left. I think the ridge height of the shed is lower than number 50. Is that correct? You know, there's no contradiction with them figures from a plan perspective.
No, we have nothing to contradict that.
See, in terms of the alternative site, I know the area. I drive past it daily, and I suppose, you know, you're on a junction with a very busy road, which unfortunately sees its fair share of accidents as well. A store this size, I think it would be. I'm sure if it was assessed under plan policy, I don't think it would meet the policies in terms of visibility displays coming out of the junction and all that sort of stuff. You know, so it's just a few points, just for now, I suppose.
Well, I suppose the last point, Councillor, to address it first, the application is to, or the proposal is to be utilise the existing access, regardless of where it is, and that could still be managed if the store were located in this alternative or identified site. The creating place guidance is there, but at the same time, our officers have still assessed this against the current policy and are concerned about the impact of dominance on the rear amenity of the dwelling at 50 Kildrum Road. And I suppose it's important to note, again, the levels weren't available, but it's the narrow or the shallow depth of the rear amenity space attached to number 50 and the fact that it will be an impression of dominance experienced by them. Thanks, Jim.
Okay, thank you. Are you looking back in again, Stephen?
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Seamus. And I suppose it's just maybe to get a comment on Paul's interpretation of the word dominance and how it relates to policy. And I think he mentioned it's more suited to adjoining the property as adjacent to the property. And I suppose we've had a fair share of applications in recently where we have seen dominance, and dominance was a factor in refusals, but they were adjoining properties, you know, so maybe a comment on the adjoining versus adjacent.
I suppose the assessment that the officers have made, Councillor, is around the fact that this is the impression of this building and how it would dominate the rear amenity space of this property. It's the proximity of it, and I suppose perhaps born out of the fact that the shed could be located elsewhere. It's close, not very close, admittedly, but it is close to the rear space of this existing dwelling and will have an impact on the residents and their ability to enjoy their rear amenity space, and it would have a dominant impact on that space by reason of its proximity. Thanks, Chair.
Just curiosity, Chair, Paul sort of emphasised the interest in working with the planning service officers there. During the processing of the application, was the alternative site at the junction then discussed, and where did those discussions end?
The alternative site wasn't identified at that stage, Councillor, no. We indicated our issues and our concerns with the proposal, and Paul did provide amendments. As he indicated, he removed the window and reduced the height, and that was submitted and considered. At that stage, officers decided to move to a recommendation of refusal, given that we believed this was unacceptable. The alternative site wasn't offered up at that stage, and it wasn't until officers made the recommendation and inspected the site further that this was identified. But at that stage, there was no suggestion of alternatives from the agent, and the recommendation was subsequently made based on the revisions provided at that stage.
Chair, just that I'm understanding this correctly, Seamus, during the discussions that eventually got to some reduction in height, the withdrawal of the windows in the gable, at no time was and this was looking like it wasn't going to be acceptable. At no time then did the alternative site come into the equation. It is only once the recommendation was made that the alternative was ever mentioned. And Paul has indicated there that the applicant is prepared to further reduce within reason. Two questions. One, why was that further investigation of the reducing not explored? And two, are you aware of what that further reduction encompassed? And even if that was considered, would that still, in your opinion, create dominance?
Well, I suppose I'll answer the other way about again. In terms of what further reduction could be made, it's difficult to say if it would be acceptable or if it would overcome. A reduction in height has already been submitted. I can assume that had they been able to reduce more, that they would have done so. The level differences and we'll call it clarification in terms of levels on the site wasn't provided at that stage and has since been provided. And again, that would have been helpful to provide us with that at that time, at the initial stage, and certainly at the stage of the first amendment. In terms of the alternative site, it wasn't identified. We looked at the proposal. As I said, we were happy with the extension to the dwelling. We raised concern with the scale, form, positioning of the proposed store, and the reductions or amendments came in. It wasn't identified at that stage because we were assessing the proposal in front of us. Yes, that may have been a failing on our part that we didn't bring that forward at that time. But I suppose the intention was to make a call on this application to get a decision reached. We took on board the amendments submitted. We considered them to remain unacceptable and proceeded to recommend on the proposal. The alternative site was then identified when we looked in greater detail, preparing for committee, looked in greater detail at the site and the proposal, and this has been identified. It was never fully and completely on the table, whether it works for the client's need or not. We can't insist on it, but it is something that we as officers believe would be an acceptable site.
Chair, and I don't want to prosecute this to death, Chair, but I'm a little bit confused here. I'm a little bit confused as to why we're introducing an alternative site coming to committee if that alternative site was not introduced while the decision processing was going on, so that it would be in some way dealt with by the applicant or by the officers there. It just seems a little bit after the fact to bring in an alternative site into the equation at all at this point, either. And I would like to, get Darren's sort of view or Seamus' view here as to why we would do that. And I don't see maybe it can be explained to me, I don't see the rationale why we would do that coming into a committee. I think if we're going to introduce that and have that on the papers of a committee, then we should bottom that out with the applicants beforehand and not introduce it as maybe in a committee paper. So, I'm just interested maybe to hear that before I'd make any recommendation, Chair.
Yeah, Darren had already indicated to come in there, so I'm going to let Darren come in now.
Thank you, Chair. Members, just to remember that the applicant has applied for planning permission for this building, and his agent has come here today saying that he considers that building to meet the planning policy. He's gone through the report and criticised the report and pointed out issues with the report, but has also said why he feels this application meets planning policy. So he's not asking to amend the application. He's asking you to approve what's before you today. The issue of the alternative site, don't get distracted by that. What planning officers are saying is, if this is refused, we will quite happily go and discuss with the applicant and see if this alternative will work. We're not saying this should be refused because there's an alternative. We're saying this should be refused because we consider it doesn't meet planning policy because of the dominance and the overbearing effect on the neighbour. So the alternative really is there in the background, that if this doesn't work out, officers are more than willing to go and discuss and find an alternative location. All right. But what the applicant's saying is, in terms of amending the application and changing the design, he might be willing to do that, but he's asking you today to approve what he's applied for. He's not sitting today saying, please defer this so I can go away and talk to planners and try and agree a solution. He sat there and said, please approve this. The officer's view is this shouldn't be approved because of the dominance, the overbearing impact, etc. That's a judgment for you as members to decide today. Or you can defer it and ask officers to go away and do further discussions with the applicant. I'll be honest, amending the building anymore, it's as low, I think, as it can go in terms of height. The pitch is as low as it can go. Floor space, he's looking 2 bays on it. So what more could be done, really? So the question before you today, members, is, does it meet planning policy or not?
Okay. Thank you. Answer. Sorry, Tommy.
Hi, Gurman Carney. Again, it's just I'm having some difficulty with it because in the policy we talk at item B about dominance or overshadowing. And again, many of us are on this committee for quite a while, and again, I'm thinking to some applications in urban settings where there was quite a bit of difficulty with one building being very close to another, and there was measurements brought out that time, as I remember, from officers in relation to the angle of the sun, etc., and because of the close proximity of buildings in an urban setting. I'm getting very hard to be convinced that if there is a space in the rural setting of 20.5 metres, that dominance or overshadowing would actually be a reality. Again, I'm relating back to the urban situation, where I know that houses are quite a bit closer than that in the town, but have still conformed with planning policy at that time. So I'm having severe difficulty, and again, I would reflect back that we used to get details about angles of the sun and the rising sun, the setting sun, etc. That might have helped in this situation, but from the applicant's assurance that the ground level is the same and the roof pitch is the same and there's a 20.5 metre gap, I'd like to know more about where dominance comes in with a gap of 20.5 metres. That would assist me in coming to a conclusion.
Okay. Thank you, Tommy. Over to you, Seamus.
I was just going to say, members, I think the reference in the policy, it's dominance, overshadowing. Overshadowing is not an issue here, and that hasn't been put forward by the planning officers, and the agent, hasn't commented on that because he doesn't need to. It's purely dominance. So the orientation of this house, you're looking out the back window at this field. The issue is that there will be the gable of a building sitting in that field facing towards this house. It's a rural area, so it's countryside. I don't think it's right to maybe compare an urban setting and a rural countryside setting. In the town, an urban area, there's an expectation of development being built around you. You're inside a settlement limit, so new buildings can be erected around you. The Creating Places guidance is there to give planning and the council and applicants and agents advice on what would be likely to be acceptable for urban housing. This is a new building in the countryside where you have an existing property who has raised concerns about the impact on their amenity, and it's only right that the council take those into account. The question before you is whether that separation distance is far enough away that you think it will not dominate and overbear that property.
Okay, thank you, Darren. All right, members. Putting you under any pressure, but it's a difficult one. Paul?
not an easy one, this one, but I think I propose it will refer it back to the officer and the agent and applicant to discuss it a bit further. Maybe they could come to some arrangement in that way. I'm making that a proposal.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Earl?
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks to our planning officers and everybody else that's been involved in this. This is a difficult one, and I'm prepared to second Councillor Robinson's proposal at this stage. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Could I just seek clarity on what the proposal here is? So the planning committee protocol allows members the option of approval, refusal, etc. So you do have two options. You delegate the application back to officers to be dealt with under the scheme of delegation, or you have the other option for a hold option. The officers will hold the issuing of a decision for a period of 2 weeks to allow discussion of potential alternative options with the applicant agent. Are members saying that they fall within that hold category, or is this delegated back to look at the current scheme?
Hold for the 2 weeks.
Okay, and Earl, that's what you're second. Okay, sorry, Stephen, I'm lighting you up now.
Oh, you're okay. Thanks, Chair. And I know this policy, this hold and delegate is new. So hold, if it doesn't be resolved, it'll come back to the committee. It'll come back to the committee.
So I'll just, if you excuse me, I'll read
Yes, thanks, Darren.
Hold under the planning committee protocol. Criteria I is hold. Officers will hold the issuing of a decision for a period of 2 weeks to allow discussion of potential alternative options with the applicant agent. And if they're not agreed, the decision then is issued. So it's hold the issuing of the decision for 2 weeks to look at alternatives. That's the current application and also this potential alternative. It's everything. If there's no agreement, though, it goes out as per the recommendation of officers.
Right. Right, I'm not seeing any other indications, and what we do, Stephen's coming in.
I'll go ahead. Sorry, Chair.
Okay, right, so we've had a proposal to put this in as a hold, and it's been explained what a hold is. I'm not seeing any other indications that's been proposed and seconded. Stephen's coming in here.
Right, Chair. I'm toying with this one in my head here, so I am. And I would have been more content, obviously, if it had been deferred back. I know the protocol has changed with a view of looking at the levels and stuff to bring it to a successful conclusion. But however, I do have to say that I'm struggling with the reasons for refusal for this application. There is a substantial distance between the proposed shade, and the rear of number 50. And I suppose we have a duty of care to the applicant's neighbours. But you know, it is a large shed. Obviously, it will be seen. Of course, it'll be seen from the house. But does it, you know, is it large enough and close enough for it to be dominant? You know, and I'm struggling with that. I don't think, based on what I've heard from the agent and in terms of the measurements he's give, and hearing the planning officer's comments as well, you know, dominant in my view. If that shade, if you're looking at the slides there, if that shade had been adjacent to that man's hedge at the back, you know, that would be dominant. You know, I don't think it's dominant. My interpretation of what's in front of me would tell me that it's not dominant. But I'm struggling just with it, you know. But I am happy to make a proposal if we don't go with the recommendation, Chairman. And based on what I've heard from the agent and from their plan officers, I'm happy that we do go against the recommendations for refusal and actually approve.
Okay, and your reasons are?
Just give them a maybe.
Oh, sorry, you've done it in reverse?
Yeah.
Okay. And Anthony?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And similar to Stevie there, I was kind of same thoughts was going to my head, but I just wouldn't get it out in words as well as Stevie done there. So I'd be of the same opinion of Councillor Buchanan, second his proposal.
Okay, thank you. So with proposals on the table, both proposed and seconded, and the first one was by Councillor Robinson and seconded by Councillor Thompson, and that is to put a hold on the application. That is to give them time to work with the planners to come up with a decision. So so that's the first proposal. So I'm going to put that to, obviously there's a counter proposal, so I'll put that one to the vote. Well, I'll see what happens with the first proposal, and if it passes, then the second proposal falls. So we're putting the proposal for a vote, or to vote for the hold. So we'll just do it the traditional way, be raising a hand for the hold. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And against? 5 against, and there's no abstentions. So as the chair, I have a cast and vote, and as I indicated earlier, I went for the hold, and I will continue with that line. I'm putting it on hold. So back to you, Seamus.
Thanks, Chair. So the recommendation of officers was to refuse planning permission for the reasons in the report. Members have decided to hold the application for a period of 2 weeks to allow further exploration with the applicant and agent. Thanks, Chair.
Okay. Thank you, Seamus. Yeah. I see Councillor Maguire indicating, and I have a feeling what he's going to ask for.
Somebody suggested a smoke break, but I was looking for a comfort break, Chair.
Thank you. And have we a seconder? Seconder Stephen. So it's 1:45 now, so if we're back in here at 4, ready to go again. And hopefully Councillor Irvine will be back by that stage. 6, application 2, and that's LA 10 2023 2340F. And again, it's over to Seamus.
Thanks, Chair. So application LA 10 2023 2340F is proposed site, infill site for 2 number detached dwellings and garages immediately adjacent to and east of 97 Cavan Road, Fintona, and the recommendation is to refuse planning permission. Members, you may remember this application was included on the weekly notification of recommendations on the 1st of March with a recommendation to refuse. It was called in for determination, presented for decision at the March meeting, but it was deferred to allow members to visit the site. That site visit was carried out on the 2nd of May, and the members present viewed the site and took account of the views and what have you that they wanted to see and discuss. So I'll move on to the presentation. So the application site as presented is identified in red, number 97 to the immediate left, while number 93 is to the right-hand side. The block plan submitted shows 2 dwellings with garages on the site. You can see again on this 97 is to the left. The dwellings proposed, standard enough single-storey dwelling, pitched roof. This one has 2 front projections and a storm porch, and again a pitched roof, rendered walls, and a standard domestic garage. The image in front of you shows that the yellow stars where the next images will be taken from, to give you an idea of where these images are taken, where the photographs are taken from, looking in western direction towards the site, past numbers 91 and 93. So you can see 91, the most proximate entrance there is to 91, 93 further down the road. Passing 93 on our right-hand side, and you can see just the beginning of the site there, that tall tree covered with ivy. Here's the application site. There's an existing field entrance into the wider field. The application site on your right-hand side. Moving on down the road. Further down the road, you can see number 97 kind of coming into view there to the right, or basically in the center of your image. On down the road further. And this is coming towards the start of number 97, the old house. On further down the road again. And this is the junction with the Mullowinny Road looking back towards the site now. The site is on your left-hand side. You can see a car in the foreground coming down the road towards the photographer. And number 97 is on the left-hand side, and the site is far beyond that. This is a photograph taken, this is to mirror the agent's previous photograph that was presented at the last committee to show the development beyond. You can see through the trees the dwelling at the far end of the site. It's just important to note, I suppose, that this image is not discernible on the ground, that you have to stop, look, and actually find this view in order to see it. So the yellow star indicates where we're looking at here. This is number 91, showing the extent of the curtilage. You wouldn't call it a restricted curtilage, it's fairly standard curtilage. Access up the centre, garden to left and right, single-storey dwelling. The other image showing the house number 91, further up the road. Same scenario, access, garden, fairly standard curtilage, fairly standard size. This image is taken from the yellow star, and the reason for presenting this image is to show that there is an existing access into the host field. We'll get onto it later, but there's an access being left off the Cavan Road to serve the wider field. It's important to note that an existing access, double gated, sufficient in scale and size, exists to serve this field. This image is taken off the site from within the field. The rear of number 97 is shown there to the right-hand side of the image, while the wider field, as you can see, and beyond on the left-hand side of the image, you can see the first house on the left-hand side of the Cavan Road, number 93. This image is taken showing the extent of the curtilage of number 97. Now, again, it's not showing a whole lot, but that's roughly what the extent of that curtilage is on the ground and existing. The photographs now taken on a better scale show, and poking through the trees in a couple of instances, show the enlarged curtilage. You can see on the right-hand image the fence, the paling posts and wire on the right-hand side show where this curtilage has been enlarged to take in more land into the curtilage. There's trees have been cut, and it's artificially enlarged, so to speak, to encompass more land. This, as we know, would require planning permission, but what we're looking at here is a derelict property. So the yellow star again identifies the location of the images when we're approaching in a different direction, and the other direction along the road. The site's now on our left-hand side. So this is the curtilage of the dwelling at, and I'll go back to identify it. At number 99. So as we approach the site, number 99 is on our left-hand side. The junction of the Mullowinny Road can be seen in the foreground. There's our application site is on further along on the left-hand side. The curtilage of number 97 is beyond the trees. Admittedly, the trees have been cut somewhat since then, but it still exists. That's where it lies. The image taken shows the road progressing. We're just passing the Mullowinny Road. Number 97 is on our left. Our site's beyond that on the left-hand side. This further up the road, number 97 and the curtilage swing right round to the left. Beyond this is number 93 and 91, site on the left-hand side. Same story as you travel along the road. Further along the road, we're coming now towards the end of this hedging. We'll be approaching the second site on the left-hand side. And then numbers 91 and 93, you can see the walls and the range walls and the accesses beyond in the foreground. So the images on the left show the existing situation on the ground. As I said previously, and as the photographs previous showed, this situation has been changed on the ground now. The intervening hedge on the bottom, on our bottom aerial image, has been removed. The extent of the curtilage at 97, a lot of the trees have been cut, and the site itself has been enlarged by virtue of the post and wire fence. Our image on the right-hand side gives an approximate position of the actual curtilage, and it identifies that including the extended curtilage and the access lane, which has been put in to serve the fields, the amount of ground that has been, should I say, lost or manipulated in order to eat up room in the overall frontage that exists between 97 and 91, or 93, sorry. So there you have the extent of the frontage. Number 99 with a 55-metre frontage, which is quite large, admittedly. It accesses, by the way, off Mullowinny Road, and it also encompasses a large shed. Number 97 with a frontage of 33 metres, and that's the frontage that existed prior to the enlarging of it. Number 93 with a 30-metre frontage, and number 91 with a 31-metre frontage. So, building to building, the length we're looking at is 140 metres. We have divided the gap that exists into 3 plots, and it can be seen that they are 3 plots considered that respect the character of the existing plots within the frontage, that being 91, 93, 97. They're the most proximate plots to the application site. We have indicated 3 yellow rectangles here, which could be taken to represent 3 dwellings on the 3 sites that are achievable. It's not believed that these are unreflective of what could be the situation, and it's a way of identifying that this gap is large enough to accommodate 3. So, for the reasons within the report, it is recommended that the application be refused, as it is contrary to SP01, DE03, DE05, and criteria B of HOU 13, paragraph 2, infilling, and is not sustainable development in that the proposed site is not a small gap suitable to accommodate only 2 dwellings within an otherwise substantial and continuously built up frontage of at least 3 buildings, each within their own defined curtilage. and the development will detract from the rural character and is an important visual break. And the second reason being that it's contrary to strategic policy SPO1, policy DEO3 and DEO5, and is not sustainable development, as the proposed development would create a ribbon of development. Speak. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Seamus. And we have speaking rights. We also had speaking rights for Thomas Buchanan, MLA. However, he is unable to be here this afternoon and sends his apologies. So we have David McKinley, who's the agent. So thank you, David. I think this is the first time you've been back in person instead of the second time. So, right, that's what it is. So, David, you know the rules. You have 10 minutes. And I'm actually not going to be as pedantic to ask you to leave because I know you're speaking on the next one, but I will not allow you back in again after you've had your 10 minutes on this to answer questions, obviously. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I think we're good to go. I suppose a little bit misleading just before I start. I was looking at some of the shots that Seamus had shown. The shots with Cavan Road wrote on it are quite old shots. They're from Google. And I'm nearly sure that's a 2009 view. But there was other ones in between times. And I think I have a few photographs myself, Seamus, that we're going to fire up. So thank you, Chair and Committee, for the opportunity to speak again on this application and following your site meeting. I read the report, very little in the report, mind you, but I hope that you were fit to see buildings in front of 97 across to 93 and 91, and collectively the other way, and that hopefully was the purpose of the meeting, and that was successful. So the application is refused on 2 points. The first one is relevant to HOU 13 infill sites. The second point is, will it be accessible as ribboning. Refusal 1, 13 rounding off and infilling. Can you review the site plan that I put up, please? Seamus, that's the one there. Yep. Now that's the context of my development limit. That's where I feel that block of units will read collectively with each other, i.e. 91 on the left-hand side and 99 on the right-hand side, and vice versa, actually, I suppose I'm looking at it. 99, yes, as Seamus rightly said, was quite a large site frontage of 50 or 60 metres. The two on the other side, 91 and 93, are smaller. So we have an opportunity here that this really should have been a textbook approval. However, we have two quite narrow sites on one side and two larger sites on the other. Now, there was reference made to boundary. There was a few trees taken down because of the damage was doing to the gable of 97 to protect that building. As we say, we're trying to protect as much character in there as we can. So it was moved. I don't think it was moved to the extent that Seamus has indicated. It certainly moved 2 or 3 metres, but it was really just to give a little bit of protection to the gable of 97, the existing building, which, by the way, is a story and a half, I think. So the site plan indicates a gap infill site capable of supporting 2 numbered dwellings easily. In this case, we have 2 numbered dwellings on both sides of the infill site. We meet the basic rules for an infill site. Each dwelling has its own drive onto the road, therefore complying with the purpose of the policy, which is to have a substantial and continuous built-up frontage in a line of at least 3 buildings. And that's important because 4 is better than 3. So this policy states at least 3 number buildings, right? So we've got 97 and we've got 93 and 91, or we've got 93 and we've got 97 and we've got 99. Okay. So next point, where are we? 3 or more we have. So the policy allows for 3 or more. Remember that when we get to the next point of refusal. It's important to note, I feel this application is a textbook example of the policy we're looking at. The next point is that permission will not be granted where the proposed site is an important visual break between existing buildings on the landscape. When a visual break between, what is a visual break between buildings? My understanding is it's a tree line boundary or a mound or small hill was between those 2 sites of buildings. Then that is a visual break. Basically, you can't see the gable of one side of the gap from the gable on the other side of the gap. And if you go to I've done an aerial photography, Seamus. That one there. And that sort of shows what I mean about a visual gap. See, number 1 and number 2 is the two to the left-hand side. They've got quite a bit of garden space. You see between 1 and 2, it has a curvation on the road. You can't read them two houses together, so there's a visual break between 1 and 2. So I'm excluding that completely from the overall context of my development limit being from number 3 to number, I think 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 3 to 9 is when we go to a continuous or a ribbon development part, which is the second refusal. When viewed from 93 towards 97, you can clearly see the two buildings of number 97 and 99. If you can go to the photograph, I'm not sure if it's the very last one or there's two photographs there. Yes, well, even, no, go back one there if you can. There, that one there. I think I can see the gables of, there, even that one, can see the gables of 97, which is a grey building, and you can see the white building beyond that again, which is 99. Okay, so there's a gap, but it's not significant enough to be a sort of a protected gap. To me, that's your two bookends. You infill between the two sites. You can read us a row of buildings all the way across to 93 and indeed 91. So yes, we meet the visual break. However, when you're sitting at that photograph on the right or the left-hand side is actually taken off Mulwunny Road. And while Seamus says it's difficult, you have to stop and start. There's 4 or 5 or 6 locations where you can actually view through the road, and you can see the front of 97, which is the old story-and-a-half building to your left-hand side, and you can see straight across the fields to 93 and 91. So your visual break, there's a little visual break, but it's not significant enough. There's nothing to destroy your view between them two sets of bookends. The other thing is, and when I read part 2 of HOU 13, there's no mention of similarities in site sizes. There's no mention of scaling or massing or bits and pieces in the new local area plan. Local area plan defines the gap as a visual break. That's it. There's no such thing as, well, we'd need to look at this site at 58 and this site at 35. It's the visual break is the tool, as I understand. It states that where is it? Permission will not be granted where the proposed site is an important visual break between existing buildings on the landscape, or where the proposed development will result in a suburban style of build-up of development when viewed with. There's no mention of site widths and bits and pieces. Yes, it's a design tool to gauge whether there's 2 or 3 sites, but the visual break is the definitive part of the local area plan. Secondly, what was I thinking there? I was going to say something else. Yes, right, okay. So the site plan, we'll go back to the site plan once more. We've got single story or store-and-a-half type dwellings, similar in scale and size. If we have to just use it as a design tool, it fits in well. It's got amenity space to both sides of it. It's got, with or without the drive up to it's nearly irrelevant. We've got the gable of 97 going right over to 90, 140 metres, I think Seamus said it was. So I think it was about 70 metres each side. So they just sit nicely. They sit nicely, and I think, and I feel, in between the gap that we have. So the remainder part of the policy assess whether proposed development will result in a suburban style of build-up. A suburban style of build-up, in my view, is high density, or to someone that looks like a street in a town. We're looking at suburban sort of townish. We don't have a footpath. We don't have streetlights. This is rural remainder. If we don't have, there's a slight contradiction here. The info asks for 3 or more, so we've got 3 or more, that could be 5. It doesn't give a definitive answer. It says 3 or 5, or sorry, more than 3, or at least 3. We have 4 there. The ones to the extreme right, there's at least 2 fields between it, so and a hedgerow, there's a visual break between that. And as you go around the corner past 97, you can't read the other 2 buildings, 1 and 2, that I showed in the aerial photograph, because of their setback of the road. So that's what policy is designed for, is to fill in between the block of buildings. So remember, to comply with policy HOU 13, it states that we need at least 3 number of buildings. I think we went over that. Can we view the aerial photograph? Again, just go back to that one. Shows the context of the overall development within the immediate area. And that's the important one. 1 and 2's gone, that's out of the way. It's not visually linked in any way to the group from 3 to 9. That to me is your context of your ribbon. Does it contribute or add to ribbon? No, it doesn't, because you've got 2 bookends either side of a site. That is the purpose of a gap site. Whether it's 140 metres or 180 metres or 80 metres or 70 metres, is still, that's your gap between 3 and 9. It doesn't read with 1 and 2, and it doesn't read the buildings further on up towards Vintner. There will also be, on the roads, there will be a loss of hedgerows, which again will help the individual link between 97 and 91 by the removal of maybe 50 metres in total of hedgerow, and that opens up that at the moment. And we're keen to leave that there because that's where we can, because that's a form of integration as well. I think that's basically me. I've viewed the planning officer report, and there's a mention of the boundary being moved. Well, we've talked about that one. And in any case, there was a photograph on the screen that it's well back beyond number 9 coming down in. Again, it's a Google Street View. There's quite a few trees and all that's been removed over the years.
That's your time anyway, David.
That's it.
So, yeah,
Fair enough. Okay. That's
if you're happy enough.
Thank you.
Okay. Members, have you any questions for David? Stephen?
Thank you, Chair. I think you kind of answered the question, David, just in relation to the creation of urban development. So you're saying that, looking at the aerial slide that you provided, so between the buildings 3 and 4, your building number 5, and that's reading that visual break is between 5 and 8. So that technically wouldn't be creating urban development. Am I right in getting that, what you're saying there? Yeah. And you're discounting them, David, because of the curvature of the road. You're discounting number 1 and 2 just to how far back they're off the road and the curvature of the road. Is that where you're going from? Okay.
All right. Sorry, can you take your time? I need to keep turning the mics back and forward, so if you give me a chance. You're finished? Okay. Philip wants to come in here.
Yeah. Apologies, Chair, and apologies both to the Speaker and to the committee generally. I've listened with interest to the points that are being raised in relation to this matter today. We're obviously dealing with this under the policy that the Council has adopted under the LDP, but a lot of the language and the terminology that is being used in relation to that is similar to or identical to, in many respects, the policy, the wording that was used in CTY 8, particularly in and around the definition of substantially continually built up frontage and elements in relation to that. Members, within the last number of days, weeks, there has been a decision handed down by the Court of Appeal in relation to an application in Uri Morning Down Council in relation to a gap site. That decision has not yet been published on the Judiciary NI website, and I'm sure the agent probably hasn't had an opportunity to consider that judgment. And I have only within the last couple of days had sight of it myself and provided it to the planning officers, who have also not had an opportunity to consider it. It is relevant to the discussion that we're having today. And unless the information that we provide to you as decision makers is correct, and unless the agent has had an opportunity of considering that and having an opportunity to comment on the potential implications of that judgment, I think any decision that the committee would make here today would be vulnerable to challenge. Whether it was to approve the application, would be vulnerable to challenge by objectors, as was the case in the Duff case, or if it was to refuse the application, would potentially be subject and potential to challenge by the applicant. So I think it's only fair that the applicant should have an opportunity of considering that, and consequently, members, with apologies for only bringing it to your attention at this stage, my view would be that it would be in the best interest of all parties if this application could be deferred for 1 month. I will provide a copy of the judgment to yourself, and we'll discuss it as internally as well. and with the agent the implications of it, and we may then have to amend the report which comes forward to you to consider the potential implications of it as well, just to come forward. So apologies, members. As I
Oh,
said,
sorry. Thank you, Philip.
but that's my recommendation.
We'll not take that as an apology. We'll thank it as a timely intervention. And we'll go to Stephen here, who I'm hoping is going to make a certain.
Sound, and that's very clear advice from Philip, I suppose, on what do we do. It's just a pity it didn't come in a bit quicker. I suppose if we didn't come to this juncture of the meeting, I suppose, and David's given his presentation. So listen, there's no harm, but listen, we've no other alternative, I suppose, than to propose a deferral as suggested by the solicitor to allow the digestion of this legal information. And there's something I was going to maybe mention at later on part of the meeting under part 2 about that decision, because I'm aware of it myself, and it seems to be got a bit of PR on the day, and what the implications of that might be. Can we get say to that at some stage as a committee, or is that possible?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll ask that it be circulated to all of the members of the committee. Certainly it would be something in respect of which, whenever the new committee is appointed following the AGM, assuming there is a new committee appointed and you're not all trapped on for 4 years.
We are.
You're trapped on. But following the AGM, we'll probably deliver a little bit of further training in and around it, but it is something we're trying to wrap our heads around ourselves a wee bit.
Okay. Thank you, Stephen. I'm going to bring Ireland here now.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Chair. Thanks to David, and also our council solicitor, Philip, for his very timely intervention, actually. I'm happy to second Councillor McCann's proposal that we deferred for the reasons that have been listed by our council solicitor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Alan?
Well, reluctantly willing to support. I was looking forward, to getting this dealt with today, but there it is.
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing this information before us.
Okay, thank you. Members, you've heard the proposal which has been posed and seconded. All agreed?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you. So this is deferred, and then will be brought back before committee at another date. Paul?
Chair, I have to leave here now.
Okay, thank you. David?
Thank you, Chair. I also have to leave.
Okay. Nobody else is allowed to leave? Right. Okay. Okay. So next we go to LA 1023 2017F, and again back to Seamus.
Thanks, Chair. So application LA 10 2023-2017 F is for retention of an access for agricultural use and internal stoned access adjacent to and immediately east of 10 Mullaharn Road, Omagh, and the recommendation is to refuse planning permission. It's helpful to note at this stage again that Tom Buchanan MLA was to speak in support of the application, but he is not available. So the image in front of you shows the submitted application site identified in red. The black arrow identifies the access point. This is important to note that this is a retrospective application. So the application, the access comes in at the black arrow, travels up along the left-hand side, around the side rear of the number 10, and joins on to an existing laneway which is there between numbers 10 and 12, Mullaharn Road. So the block plan gives it in more detail. That's what's on the ground. It's a stoned access that's kind of grown with grass at present. It goes around the two sides of the third-party property and links onto the existing lane on the left-hand side of that shot, defined. You can see lane on it. So the yellow star again indicates the approximate position of the photograph being taken. The fence in the foreground and gates are set back slightly off the road edge towards the front of number 10. This image is taken further back the road. Again, there's a bit of a mountain or a ditch has been created along the roadside. A fence created to link up with the gates which are set back off the road to allow, I assume, a large vehicle to wait before entering the field and sit in a safe manner off the carriageway. This image is taken right at the entrance. You can see the gravel or the stone just at the near side of the existing pier attached to the wall at number 10. This is looking down the new laneway. The gates can be seen. You can see some of the lane where it starts to turn then in the other side of the property. As I say, the grass is growing through it, but it is a hardcore lane. It is in place already. Further shot then, stepped in off the road, gates visible. You can see the fence line to the right-hand side and the trees within the curtilage of number 10. Taken on further into the field, then this is through the gates. The lane turns to the right-hand side at the corner of the fence at this point, and then travels up the other side of the house. Another shot of the same. And this is where it turns then to go towards, you can see a gate far in the distance, well, not far, but in the background. And that gate's closing off the existing laneway that I mentioned previously. So you can see, obviously, number 10 on your right-hand side, that's the front garden. That strainer there is at the corner post of the front garden. This shot's taken from basically looking back out now at the corner of the lane. You can see the lane on the left-hand side migrating down towards the centre of the photograph, then where it turns to the right and comes along that boundary. This is just looking out where it will migrate further along and past the front of the house. And that's where this shot is taken then looking towards the back of the house. The wooden fence on the right-hand side defines the rear curtilage of the property from the wider field. The gate, as I mentioned previously, closes off the existing laneway that runs between the two houses. This is a photograph taken from the laneway that's in place, looking in at the rear of the third-party property. That's showing the gate, again, as I mentioned, that serves the lane or closes off the lane that runs between the two properties. This is where the existing lane then runs up along the other property, number 12, and that's it then progressing up into the field where it more or less ends at that point where you can see there's a bit of a rise in the gradient and the field begins and the existing lane ends. And there's a better shot of it, just showing again, as I described, the lane ending at the field. This view is taken from the rear of the property at number 10, who, helpful to note, has objected and has on record their concerns about this access. So this is the image looking out at the lane. I suppose it's difficult to envisage, but if you can envisage vehicles, traffic, tractors using this lane and the potential for an impact. Further image showing the existing lane, as mentioned, where it migrates up into the field and then ends where it reaches the field. So the lane, as I said, that exists is shown here, indicated by the red arrow. This is approximately 5.2 meters wide. And it's what currently serves, or what did before the work was carried out, what did serve this wider field. So the ortho and aerial imagery showing the situation on the ground, you can see the lanes in place on this image. You can see the existing lane between the two houses. This shows the image, the ortho imagery, with the public road identified as it crosses or passes past number 10. The existing lane as it exists and passes between the two houses where it meets the road and migrates up into the field. And this is the situation as it now exists. So what we have is the aforementioned existing lane identified in blue, the public road obviously existing identified in blue, and we have two more sections of lane now travelling around this third-party property. So again, we go back to the policy DE1 general amenity requirements, and I've highlighted or underlined a couple of points here, and it's about the impact on the residential amenity of nearby properties or sensitive receptors. And the clarification goes on to indicate where proposals would unacceptably affect the amenities of the existing use of land and buildings, and on down then it talks about good neighbourliness and fairness. The issue that has also been raised or that has come to the fore in this proposal is that it was submitted as an agricultural access. So under the agricultural policy, we sought information to demonstrate that this was an agricultural access, therefore that the person that created it or that is proposing to use it was a farmer, or that it was required to allow him to be a farmer or to continue his farming activity. There was no evidence provided to demonstrate this. The extent of the land owned, as identified by the agent on the site location plan, is shown in blue here, and the image on the right shows that, and it shows what this land contains. There are no buildings, there are no features, there's nothing here to demonstrate or to signify the need for a second access or an access of this scale, or indeed for any reason for this access to link up with an existing access that essentially serves the same field that they already have access to, and where the black arrow is on the red location plan, they're already in the field. If you want to access this field, you have done so by going through the two gates. The need for this lane, as I'll go back to this slide, to wrap around a house that already has a road up one side, a lane up the rear side, and now to effectively be surrounded, officers had a lot of difficulty in seeing or getting to the bottom of what this was for and what it was needed for. And that's the information on lack of farm activity was sought. It was inquired about because it was submitted as an agricultural access, but the information supplied more or less dictates that there's no farming activity. The red star indicates on this slide indicates the access position that we're considering. The yellow star shows an existing access to serve the field. Now, the agent has provided supplementary information to indicate that this field, the wider field, as you can see, the most of it in this image, was bought between two persons, and it is to be divided. I think on the agent's own slides, we'll see after he has indicated that the field is to be divided between the two people who have bought it, roughly to the rear of the property in the centre here, number 12, and that the applicant is to control the right-hand side part of it. It's important to note that two accesses do exist to serve this field at present. We're now looking at 3. So again, I'll move on to the reasons for refusal. So it is recommended that the application is refused for the following reasons. The proposal is contrary to Strategic Policy SP01, Policy DE01, General Amenity Requirements, in that the proposal will unacceptably affect the amenity of the neighbouring dwelling to the west from overlooking and loss of privacy. A, noise and general disturbance. The second reason, it is contrary to Strategic Policy SP01, Policy DE01 and Policy AB06, which is Agricultural Development. Criteria C, as the proposal would result in detrimental impacts on the amenity of residential dwellings. It is also contrary to Policy AB06, Agricultural Development, as it has not been demonstrated that the farm business is currently active and has been established for at least 6 years. And finally, again, Policy AB06, Agricultural Development Criteria B, as it has not been demonstrated that the proposal is necessary for the efficient use of the business. Now, I will not backtrack, but I should have read out at the outset. The agent did provide additional information late last week, and I'll just do a brief summary of it, although David may be I might be stealing his thunder somewhat here, but he has indicated that the purpose of this lane is to connect with the existing lane. He fails to understand how loss of amenity can occur in respect of a front garden, and the rear garden is protected by a wooden fence. The applicant never intended to annoy the neighbour, and it's possible that a crack in the wall may have resulted in this, but according to Google, this cracked wall was there before 2021. A hedgerow can be planted and it can be native species. The field is bought in association with another farmer who cuts silage of it. Previously, the land was claimed in terms of agricultural subsidies by another farmer. The objector claims 2 entrances exist. The agent states that there's only one, which is the lane between the two, number 10 and number 12 Mullaghern Road. The new lane is necessary to allow for loading and unloading of sheep to safeguard road safety and to ensure that the road isn't unnecessarily dirtied or messed. The applicant isn't a farmer, and DFI Roads have approved the access. The further supporting information is an invoice for the shifting of a digger to the site and an invoice for approximately 280 tonne of stone to fix drains and do certain bits of work on the field. And there's 2 statements from neighbouring farmers stating that they graze the sheep in the winter and that another farmer cuts silage in the summer months. So that's the situation. And just to recap, the issue that officers have, or the issues that officers have identified is, in the first instance, the need for this, both in terms of being an agricultural development, but also in terms of basic need. This is required to link up with an existing lane that serves a field. And the access point, if it were needed to be wider or set back from the road a little to allow a Jeep and trailer or a tractor and trailer to access, that could be done. But to go around this property and to have the potential impacts on this third-party property that it would is considered contrary to policy. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Seamus. We have David McKinney, the agent, again speaking on behalf of the applicant. So, David, as usual, it's 10 minutes. So.
Again, thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to speak and Seamus for his precise report. Can you go to the one photo, that one there? That's, look, this has really only been agreed in this last 6 months. Two people bought the ground. Richard Sayers, applicant, bought the red field. And by the way, that's not, that field is actually within the limit of Gilligooly, the limit of development of Gilligooly. He didn't buy it as a, he bought it as a small field for a couple of horses for the kids and the possibility of building a house on it. Not through that entrance, because the entrance to the house will have to come through the gap between number 10 and number 12. The reason why the entrance is there is he struggled to get a tractor, low loader and a digger into the site without, it's 5 metres wide. Don't forget the wall's 5 metres wide and it's 2 metres back of the road edge. Now, rather than run the risk of allowing another neighbour directly across, it's sort of like an inclined, it's like an inclined tarred verge. He didn't want to destroy that. So he took the digger off on the road and he stopped quite a few cars and he thought, flip this. He says, we'll just put an entrance through in front of number 10. Now number 10 is a strange orientation. It's gabled onto the road. The front views to the east. That's the front garden. As I'm aware, private amenity is to the rear. This is development land, or it will be development land. I hope I'm putting it into the call for sites for at least one dwelling for Richard to reside in, and a little bit of, and that would be the agricultural access that he has currently done for the access to the remainder of the field. So there will be quite a spacious front meadow, and that will protect number 10. I did mention on the letter last week, I couldn't get the client. He was away working quite often. He services AD plants and difficult to get. But the laneway, I've offered to remove the rubble from the southern aspect of number 10. The reason the rubble's down the eastern side of number 10, which is the entrance, is that when a tractor and trailer comes out, and you'd have seen it yesterday, the day before, they were cutting silage, and there's no dirt on the road, that the stones clean the wheels as they go out. So you're coming straight out. He can't do that in number 10, between 10 and 12, because he physically struggles to get in and out. Machinery's not getting any smaller, it's just getting larger. So we have proposed putting a hedge between sort of in the front of number 8 or number 10. Again, that was only to give a little bit of privacy to to the objector. I note the objector didn't want the hedge, so we're quite happy to remove that. But all I'm saying is we've offered the opportunity to remove the southern aspect of the laneway, and that'll take the link away from the two. So it's really just to pull a tractor and trailer or a dung spreader or a slurry tanker up onto clean rubble through the gates. And you notice the gates, funny enough, are set well back, so he can actually take a tractor and trailer and be completely off the lane. Look, this was done. This is obviously a retention of, and he had a fair bit of forethought because he put the thing over tight to number 10 because visibility displays is quite limited to the east. And road service are happy, as I understand, as long as it's an agricultural entrance. That's what it's going to be. So, point one, loss of amenity. If I remove the southern laneway, there's no loss to the amenity of number 10. The front is really just a collection point for a tractor and trailer, or a tractor and dung spreader, or a tractor and silage trailer to pull up, set on, and travel on out. There's no intent to provide a building or any of that nature there. It's literally just to keep the road clean. It's a health and safety aspect, I suppose, and pulling dirt onto the road can give slipperies and there's issues with just safety of road traffic. The access is safe, by the way, and we've had to extend the visibility display to the west in front of number 12, and there's no third-party land required. So it's all within the road verge. So no, there's no loss of amenity if I remove the southern aspect, southern lane aspect of it. Even with it there, the rear garden is protected by a fence, and you've seen from Seamus's photograph, he's got a tremendous view out of that house, but he's in a development limit. So strictly speaking, we could put 40 houses in there if we had to, through call for sites, and he's even less. There's probably only going to go one house in there, I would imagine, and he'll retain the remainder of the agricultural field. So that's point one sorted. Point two, detrimental, as opposed to resultant detrimental impacts. Well, I think I've dealt with that in number one. Point three, is it a farmer or is it not? To be fair, that's probably my slip. I've missed that one. I didn't see it. That field, I know the previous owner was Mr. Fleming. He leased the ground and he farmed it right up to the year that these two guys took over. I believe it's currently been introduced into the business ID for the larger part of which is the farmer. Richard, as I said, isn't a farmer. He enjoys a few sheep. His father-in-law's always looking somewhere to put sheep, and he was even tending to graze it. But he's two girls, and I suppose a wee bit of grass would sort horses out, and that's exactly where it is. So he bought that little bit of ground for a house and a recreation space for the family. The 6-year rule, I think, the land's been continually farmed right up to when they bought it, which was 22, I think. They removed the hedge to put a fence up. That hasn't happened because of the enforcement action that's currently in place. He stopped everything. The grass, if you look at the photographs, the grass has grown up through the stones, which looks like a field literally, but it's hard standing for a machine to sit on. Hard standing for a machine to sit on. The three accesses, there's only two. The third one belongs over to the left-hand side. It's actually quite a steep incline, and that's retained by the farmer. He's only got one access to in between 10 and 12 to access the ground, which is difficult. It can easily happen with a car and a small trailer, but you introduce the bigger stuff into that, it doesn't happen. And that's exactly why he's designed his access, that he can cater for machinery going in and out. So I think we've met 3 and 4, as well as 1 and 2. I suppose to complete then, I made a few notes as we went along. So all work stopped once enforcement started. And he's waiting on the outcome of this to gradually put the fence up in bits and pieces when that happens. The views from the garden, I don't know whether Seamus is allowed to go back over his presentation, but look, it shows lovely green pastures, and that's what's currently there. We're not going to impose it that much more. The house will sit fairly well back in the site if and when we do it. But he's not entitled to the views, if that makes sense. It's a limit of development, and I'm not being crude in that. It's within a development limit. There was some necessity to take houses. So if there was 10 houses in there, the views would be completely restricted. I suppose I'm respecting him as well by doing what we've done. So I've mentioned the clean wheels and the tractors. That's the big one, and the map shows the split. That's me, guys. I can't say much more than that. Other than
I'm quite happy to remove, and he is quite happy to remove and that was stated on a letter last week, that we'll take the southern laneway, which is a link between the two away. And that means you just step off the field onto a rubble hard standing and away you go.
Okay,
Thank you, Chair.
thank you. So any questions? Glenn?
Chairman, no, you're quite right in that you don't have a right to view, but I suppose, and whilst you've outlined the rationale there for the lane, you do have right to privacy and you do have right to reasonable amenity. And I suppose, privacy is an important issue, particularly someone living in a property for I don't know how long. But what's the rationale again? You said that there will be no loss of amenity. I'm just trying to figure that out because I can see that if someone lived for a period of time without this passing there so close to their property, this would be a loss of amenity. And I can even say that perhaps a change of that nature would affect someone's amenity. So if you had a lane going past this side of your house and it was moved to the other, it would be a change in what you've grown to call your home, if you like. So just outline again how there's no loss of amenity from this proposal.
The access that he has in there will be used very little. It's silage. It could have been 20 movements in and out of that last week for a period of maybe 3 hours or 2 hours, and that's it for maybe 2 weeks. There'll be a bit of fertilizer sowed. There'll be this, that, and t'other. That element is an agricultural field. You would have been in there cutting grass. You've been in there spreading silage or slurry. Along the side, yes, I can see where it become an issue, and that's why I've said that we'd remove the southern laneway to give him complete protection. And we have a hedgerow going right around it. So that gives him an enclosure if he wishes. I've read his report, and I don't think he's keen on the hedge. Look, it's a condition we can put on that it doesn't happen. But that's the house is in a field to a degree, and you have activities already happening there. This isn't over glorifying it anymore, other than we've put a gate in to get in easily with machinery. He did note there was a crack in the wall, and maybe you heard that or not, I'm not sure, but he said every time a car or a trailer or whatever went in and out past it, the neighbour had concerns about it, and he looked at it. So we checked on Google, and it's been there long before, but maybe he's concerned that it will alter it more. So look, there's woes. That wasn't his original reason for doing it, but it was to get sort of proper access and safe access into the field. But it is sporadic, and it's very, very limited use, and it's only for activities of a farm, maybe dropping a couple of cows off or dropping 10, 15 sheep off and away again and collecting them. Thank you.
Thank you. Anthony Philly.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks for that.
Sorry, Anthony, I'm going to stop you. I missed Darren.
Sorry, apologies, members, and obviously planners don't normally come in at this point in the meeting, but I think it's only fair on the applicant and agent here just to clarify. Councillor Campbell's question was to the agent about no loss of amenity. Just to be clear, the policy test is not that there's no loss of amenity. So what you're being asked to consider today is not whether there's no loss of amenity. The policy test you've been asked to consider today is whether this development will unacceptably affect the amenity of the neighbours. So you can still have an impact on the amenity of the neighbours. It's not a no loss, okay? It's not that there should be no change. It's what degree of change is there? And then you have to make an assessment whether that's an unacceptable effect. So you're looking there at the noise from the vehicles, the number of vehicles, et cetera, et cetera. So just to clarify that the policy test is clear here for members, okay?
Okay. Sorry, Anthony, if you go ahead now, please.
No bother at all yet. Thanks for that, Darren. Yeah, it's an unusual kind of one. It's not the one we usually get. I was just wondering about the farming aspect of it. Does these guy farm it himself, David, or does a farm ID number or flock number or herd number, and like that? Any receipts for slurry spraying or baling, round baling or silage or fertilizer or the land set? Or just kind of wondering what the state was there.
He bought the land as a development, I suppose, opportunity for a single house. His father-in-law
and his father-in-law would also rent land of me over winter for grazing of sheep. It's only 6.5 to 7 acres. I think that plot itself. He didn't buy it for agriculture, but the field's big enough to I suppose the overall farm, that whole block was bought together, and the farmer that took the other half of it cuts the grass, and he's paid him for the removal of grass. But no, he's not a farmer. It's within the development limit of Gilligooly, and I know where we are in that at the moment. It's a bit of a mess in regards to call for sites coming now, and it's our intention to put a call for site application in, but low density, very low density. So, sorry. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. And Thomas O'Reilly.
Thanks, Chair. I'm a little confused, David. You know, I'm just wondering at this stage, you know, why, if you're so readily dropping the southern aspect of Delaine, why that southern aspect of Delaine wasn't dropped. Quite honestly, I'm struggling to buy the proposal that the lane is there to clean the wheels of anything. You know, to turn in a tractor and trailer, I can buy that if I'm not so sure about the other lane, the 5 meters and all the rest, probably for bigger agricultural stuff, it's tight. So the agricultural access is there. It's well setting off the road by the looks of things in the first place. And I'm not sure that you need a laneway up the full extent of that exposure of number 10, never mind turn the corner. And a gateway with a small ability to turn in and sit there to unload or load. So I'm not sure about the lane coming up there at all. And then I'm not quite understanding how you're getting around this thing that it is on the one hand put in as an agricultural access, but there is no farm business. So, you know, I'm not sure where that sits, how you can sort of get around that one, and why it's not just put in, if it's possible, to put it in on some other context, you know.
There was two parts to that question. I'm thinking about the first one. It was to do with the extent of the laneway within the field. That's it. No, it is. Look, I suppose the client spent quite a bit of money draining the fields. I have a personal experience in that field that we used to bale straw on it. That particular corner was always mossy. And what I mean by moss is it was 5 or 6 inches of just rubbishy clay, and I presume that, well, now with the draining of it's probably helped that, but he would have needed to remove that in any case. Now he hasn't put any other surface on top of it other than stones. The grass, my photographs show there, and I think Seamus's does as well. The grass is growing up through it. It's nice to have, and it's nearly a necessity to have a portion of land, a portion of stone in front of the gate to actually set your vehicle on, to get out, to open the gate, and then go out through the gate, close the gate, and get just to have a little bit. So that's why it's not going nowhere. It's actually essential for getting a machine up onto hard ground. And the weather this year is a true token of the complete necessity for that. In regards to the agricultural status, it's not his intention to build a house immediately. It is a 6 or 7 acre field that requires I suppose servicing and eating. You'll not cut that with a lawnmower. That needs quite a few 4 feet to eat the grass down and all of that sort of stuff. So yes, there is. I think there is a necessity for an agricultural access just for that particular field once it's fenced off. And he didn't fence it off following the introduction of the enforcement action. He just let it sit. So that's at the minute, yes, it looks like one big field, but on paper it's divided. It is subdivided into 2. So it is a field of 7 acres, which is quite substantive. And if it puts his intention as one house, and if he puts that in, we've still got another 5 acre field, which manoeuvrability of a machinery actually, and I'm sure Mr. Rainey and all the rest, and farmers inclined here, a bloody tractor and trailer is similar to a 40-foot lorry, almost, and it requires big big sort of turning movements to get in and out. You're maybe not so sure of it, but it's massive now. They're massive. They're massive. They'll carry up to 18 or 19 ton on a load of grass now. Hopefully, Councillor Rainey will confirm that. But that's it. So yes, you'll notice too the access is quite wide and it goes down into a point, and that's to pick up the sort of the head turning of a vehicle in and out. It is quite difficult to get in and out of the existing entrance. That's why he's created that one. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rainey.
I'm not here to speak for David at all, but I did pick up that there was 120 tons of hardcore. Well, it's not much of a lane. I would call it just a hardcore area. It's definitely not a lane. If you were putting down a lane, you would be talking about hundreds of tons.
Thank you, Councillor Rainey. I'm not seeing anybody else indicating. The chair has arrived in the building. I'm not sure whether he wants to take over now or wait till I finish off this piece of business. Thank you, Chair. Councillor McGrath.
Chair, there's a bit of something there behind the house. It's like a track, you know, with it's like a concrete something there, you know.
Chair, can we
Yeah.
That's the overhead one. That's yeah, that one there. You see there there's a where the red star is stood up, and then there's like a concrete or like, you know, what is that bit of ground there for? It's kind of dividing the two fields.
Oh, the between the grey and the grass.
Sorry, I haven't changed over the microphones. Thank you, Tommy.
You lose your job, Joe.
Yeah, I'm losing it here shortly.
That was an existing hedgerow that was taken away. Are you talking about the bit that heads from the back of the long deep site down at the? That was an existing hedgerow that was regraded and levelled into the field. If that makes sense.
All right.
I'd like to query that because I'm not so sure. Are we talking about the same thing here? This is very hard to do, Chair, because I can't follow what that is there.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, it's difficult for us to interpret that from an aerial photograph. I'm going to hand over. Seamus, do you want to come in there?
Is the issue with describing the area? I can move the cursor to where you want it. No, look what I've done now. So, yeah, so it's that area.
Right, hold on, David, I turn you on.
That's an existing hedgerow. It was removed. The back field, the green field, would have been about a metre higher than the lower field that he bought, and he took the hedgerow out and created a sort of a levelling between the two fields. His red line sort of goes up to the top of that grey, which is really soil, levelling out fields. Yeah.
Okay, so we're happy enough that that's soil. It's too wide to be a roadway or something. Okay. Right. I'm not seeing anybody else indicating, so David, if you can address back now, please, thank you.
Sure.
And it's give Seamus a chance there, and then any questions for Seamus.
Thanks, Chair. So, yeah, just to go over a few points there as a result of that. Firstly, the building of a house has been mentioned, and that's not what this application is for or about. It's about the retention of an existing access and laneway. The removal of rubble has not been considered. That's not what it's about. Visibility displays aren't normally required for agricultural accesses. So that's, again, not entirely a consideration for this. The creation of a lane is not considered a reasonable response to avoiding putting dirt on a road. To create a lane for another farmer, again, is considered an unreasonable response. And agricultural development can't be based on someone else's agricultural activity. And I think, in fairness, David has said the applicant isn't a farmer. That's difficult to get past. Siting machinery using this lane or hard standing or whatever it's going to be called, to site machinery in front or directly to the rear of third-party property, again, it will affect the amenity of a dwelling. And it's not considered, and it wouldn't be considered good neighbourliness or fair. This is not about a view, it's about the impact of the access. The photographs that I did show from the objector's property or from the third-party property was not to indicate that this would impact on their view. In fact, standing in that property, you'd have to look over the fence to see the lane, but it's the use of the lane, and very often in terms of the impact, the fact that it's there and can be used, and the impact that would have on the ability of someone perhaps to be out the back of that house enjoying it, with the knowledge that this could be trafficked by a farmer, by a large tractor, by a slurry tanker, and that they would have the permission and the wherewithal to use that at any stage if this were approved. And the suggestion again, and this has come up again, I suppose, the suggested removal of the southern part of the laneway, the agent was contacted about removing this. There's enforcement action on this. It is within the agent's letter. There is a line there about the potential for removing this, but this was not brought forward. It did not form part of the proposal. The red line was not amended. There was no proposal to remove this or a scheme of works submitted to demonstrate that this could be done and reseeded and resown in grass. So that was not in front of us and was not available for consideration. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Anybody, any further questions for Seamus? Or no, Thomas?
Can I just sort of seek a little bit of clarification here, and that are we, if we are looking at a potential refusal of the lane, does that take out the access gate as well, or does the access gate still remain?
Would be, well, it would be possible for a farmer to make an access into a field without requiring consent or planning consent. But the issue remains that the applicant or the offender is not a farmer. So,
fair point.
I might seek clarification from Darren on this.
Yes, good pass there, Seamus.
So members, as I said, it's constantly, and apologies for saying the same thing over and over again, you're here to determine what's in front of you. So he has applied for an application, you've seen the drawings, you've got the description, that's what you have to determine. If that gets approved or refused, grand. If it gets refused, that leads to enforcement, and then that will be picked up separately. So if it's permitted development or anything else like that there, that would be dealt with separately outside of the application. You're here today, consider what you've seen on the screen and make a decision.
Okay. Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Darren.
Thank you. Anyone else want to come in there? I don't know who to stare at the hardest. Tommy?
Gurmagari Carley, Chair, again, I've been pondering this, but what's in front of us is a house at number 10 that had one agricultural access to the rear, that now has another access to the front of the house and across the side of the house. So I'd have to go with the officer's recommendation that that's a severe loss of amenity. So I propose accordingly, Chair.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, and apologies earlier if I suggested that in relation, I thought I made the point that there would be a loss of immunity, but you're right, quite right, Darren, that a certain loss of immunity in an application can be permissible, but I do feel the extent of the loss of immunity is too much in this case. So I would second Councillor Maguire's proposal. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, so you've heard it proposed and seconded to go with the officer's recommendations. Is there anybody else with any other proposals or contraries? Right, I'm not seeing anybody, so that's unanimous. We're going with the officer's recommendations. Back to you, Seamus.
Thanks, Chair. So the application was presented with a recommendation to refuse planning permission for the reasons within the report. Members have agreed with this recommendation and planning permission is refused. Thanks, Chair.
So that's all the that part of the meeting completed. So I'm going to pass over to Councillor Irvine, who's the chair, and he will carry on with the rest of the business. I hate that, but so I've got to up to 7. Yeah. There. We're at item 7, Robert. Thank you very much. Take me to try this with. Yeah, oh, I have just a.
Members, thank you very much. I'll take this opportunity to thank my colleague, Councillor Clockery, for standing in while I was away on family matters. And unfortunately, slightly delayed, longer than I wanted to be, but traffic wasn't too bad this side of the pond. But it's always a useful exercise to get other people into the chair to sort of try and break them in, see what we can. Yep. I'll just have the opportunity now before we go on to item 7, just to thank you all for your participation in my year in office. We've got through the business and it's always been useful. Some are on a steeper learning curve than others, but they have presented themselves very well and carried forward. I just thank you for your help. It's not an easy job, as several of you round the table who have chaired other committees know exactly. So when you get sort of qualified participation and at least to use individual expertise, it does help complete the business. I can say that I will be handing over to somebody from Sinn Féin who will be nominating, obviously, at next month's meeting. May I wish them well in their year. And as I return to the lower benches, I will try to give of my expertise back from those benches, and hopefully the person in the chair will be able to control. So that's it. Thank you for that. Quick moment, I won't keep you too much longer. We'll move on to item 7. To note the schedule of planning decisions issued in April of this year, paper D. Any questions for Darren? Darren, do you want to say something?
No, members, just papers for noting, I suppose. Yeah, so.
Yeah, okay. Councillor Thompson, Earl.
Thank you, Chair. Propose to note.
Okay, Councillor McCann.
Second that, Chair.
Okay, all agreed? Great, thank you. We'll move on to item 8, to note the report on planning appeal decisions issued in April. Any questions? No questions. Could I have a proposer and seconder to note, please? Proposed Councillor Maguire, second Councillor McGrath. All agreed? Oh, agreed. Stephen, did you want to come in? No, that's okay. Item 9, to note report on proposal of application notice, PAN. Any questions? Okay, proposed and seconded a note, please. Councillor Thompson Earl, seconded by, I see Councillor Campbell scratching his head. I presume that's you seconding, Glenn? Yep, that's it. Thank you very much. All agreed? Agreed, thank you. On to item number 10, to note update report on planning enforcement. Any questions in that regard? Councillor McCann to pronote, yeah. And Councillor Riley, did you want a second? Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor McGrath, all agreed? Agreed, thank you. Go on now to item 11, items of correspondence. The first one's from the Department for Infrastructure. Kim? Sorry,
This is in response to our representations, and it is really just for noting at this stage.
Proposed and seconded in the note, please. Councillor Maguire and Councillor Rainey, thank you. All agreed? Agreed. Second item of correspondence.
This is from Cavan County Council, and just to note that this was previously presented to members. A detailed report came to the June 23 Planning Committee, and a response was submitted at that point. So updated information has been received, and just the advice from planning officers is that we don't need to respond further to this current consultation.
Okay. Proposed Councillor Feely, seconder. Councillor McCann, all agreed? Okay. Third item, correspondence from SSE Renewables. Kim?
Thank you, Chair. So yes, a letter was sent previously. This is an application which members will recall has been called in by the department, the Tattymoyle Wind Farm. So the notification now is from SSE, and it's really about the stakeholder and local community engagement. What we would just want to note is that we haven't received a response from the DFI Minister to our representations inquiring as to why, the reasons why this was called in. So it might be an opportune time just to follow up.
Councillor McCann, Stephen?
Happy to propose the noting of the letter, and also maybe do no harm to send a wee follow-up letter just to see where it's at with the department.
Yeah. I think members should realise the issue coming from the department is that they're trying to cap the energy provided by wind farms so that some of them become regionally significant. Therefore, they will be determined centrally rather than locally. And we as a council particularly feel that that is unfair and will be a significant problem in regard to fees. Councillor McCloughery, are you happy to second?
I'm happy to second, and I totally agree with your comments. That's what I was going to say as well.
Yeah. It's all right, we get the hard lifting and everything like that, but they seem to want to take the easy bites. We're not going to go down without a fight, a hard fight. So happy enough. All agreed that we note but reply in such a vein? All agreed? Yep, thank you. Go on to the fourth item of correspondence in regard to our revised LDP timetable. Kim?
Yes, this is just correspondence from the department confirming that they're content with our revised timetable. We did also, as part of that note, the resource capacity issues with the Planning and Appeals Commission, which has the potential to impact significantly on our timeframe for development and agreement of our local policies plan. I suppose just to note that we will consider this in more detail at our meeting of the Local Development Plan Steering Group next week.
Yep. Just before we go to that, we can actually cross-relate this piece of correspondence to the reply coming back to the correspondence noted under item 6 in regard to, I think, the recommendations streaming out of the PAC and the replies on behalf of the department in regard to what they're doing. And one of those, I can't quite remember which number, they talk about the time frame for actually the LDPs taking, and they should be revisited. I think it would be wise, maybe, if we actually refer back, and I know this is a suggestion coming from the chair, that the time frame should not be extended, but it should be compressed, because at the moment, the processes in regard to LDP, both the draft plan strategy and the local policies plan, are elongating the process to nearly double what was, if not treble, to what was originally envisaged. And the criticisms coming out of the PAC, we can note about it under the correspondence, is that it is not best serving the constituents throughout the whole of Northern Ireland. So I think it deserves a reply back, and that we would say, we note the constraints in regard to staffing. Those are not our issues, and they should be sorted. The timetable should be as it is, because we want to provide a better service for our constituents. So, members, would you be happy if we reply in that vein? Councillor Thompson, Earl?
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and I totally agree with your comments, and I'll formally propose that does happen, and also propose the noting of the letter.
Thank you very much indeed. Could I have a seconder for that? Councillor McGrath. All agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much indeed. We'll move on to the 5th item of correspondence, Kim. It's basically about an uplift in fees.
Yeah, an uplift to planning fees as outlined in the correspondence, Chair.
Yep. If we're happy, could I have a proposer seconder to note, please? Councillor McCann and Councillor Campbell, thank you very much indeed. All agreed? Great. I will go on to item 6, correspondence from the Department of Finance, Kim.
Thank you, Chair. So yes, this response has come to Council Chief Executives. It's from the department, and members, we've just referred to the previous report from the Public Accounts Committee into issues around planning, and this correspondence attaches the department's response to the Public Accounts Committee, setting out their action in relation to the particular recommendations or actions which were the responsibility of central government. I suppose it's really for noting. However, we do have some concerns in relation to the response outlined in regard to rural housing. The response refers to the strategic planning policy statement around climate change and suggests that this is a way to address issues around development in the countryside. We did previously consider the SPPS on this, and we've submitted a response setting out our concerns about any attempt or approach to limit development in the countryside in regard to climate change. And I suppose we would be suggesting that we would write back to DFI to outline our concerns, that this was not our understanding of how this action would be taken forward. The agreement between local and central government through the Planning Improvement Group was that this action around rural housing was a matter for local councils to address and not for the department.
Yeah, I think we should maybe note as well in regard to primacy of legislation, which legislation is paramount. I think this is trying to squeeze using environmental legislation to actually get another agenda where environmental legislation doesn't necessarily have primacy in regard to other forms of legislation. Councillor McClockery, John.
Thank you, Chair. I fully believe that we should respond to this. It undermines what this council went through to come up with a robust plan for our countryside, and they're basically taking that away and throwing their agenda on top of it again. And again, it switches the primacy. Are we the lead? Are they the lead? Or are we just subservient to them? And I feel that we, in the strongest terms possible, should indicate our dissent from this here.
Yep. Any further comments? Councillor Thompson, Earl.
Yeah, thanks. I'll second Councillor McClockery's proposal that we write back, and also obviously the noting of the correspondence as well.
That's great. We fought long and hard to get where we are, and that was for the betterment of our area. And we put enough mitigations in, and they were accepted by PAC at independent examination. So all agreed? Great, thanks very much indeed. There are no, I think, other items of correspondence? Oh, two further items, sorry, I apologise.
Two further items. So the first one is from the Department for Infrastructure, and it is a notification. So this is in relation to application LA 10 2022-0552 LBC. So the alteration and extension of the building at High Street, Omagh. This was the approval decision by the committee to approve the application at High Street, Omagh, for the proposed hotel development, which was then called in by the department. So this correspondence has advised that the department is now content that the council continues to process the application.
Councillor Thompson, Earl.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Kim, for that. I'm happy to propose the noting of the correspondence, but also to welcome what has happened here, because in my mind, it should have never been called in the first place by them. So I look forward to that progressing. Happy to propose, Chair.
Yep, thank you. Councillor McGrath, Bernard.
I second that.
Yeah, Councillor McCann, Stephen.
Yeah, same, Chair. I'm glad to see this has actually moved on now, and hopefully we'll see boots on the ground in Omagh very shortly and get this hotel up and going.
Yep, that's great. All agreed, members? Yep, thank you. Next piece then. Oh, sorry, Tom.
You're okay. Chair, and that's all well and good. You know that we have now got this correspondence back, but it's absolutely shameful that we get no explanation here whatsoever. And is this going to be a continuous sort of we just talked about undermining, and this is another example of you can't just whip this in, or you shouldn't be allowed to, as the department, whip this in at a whim and then just go after X amount of time, come back to us and sort of say, that's all right, go on ahead, lads, you're doing fine. It doesn't work like that. That is treating us with contempt, Chair. And particularly contemptible is the fact that they don't even give any explanation or rationale thereafter. I think in the strongest possible terms, we need to go back there and challenge how that part of policy is working, because I think that leaves the council planners and council planning committee in an invidious sort of position with developers that, well, even though you say yes, this may not be yes, and it may be held for months at a time on the whim of the department and given no explanation thereafter. So I would propose, Chair, that unless there's some really strong reason why we shouldn't, that we should seek at least some explanation and voice our opinion that this should be reviewed as a piece of policy.
Yep. I think what we need to be is probably aware that, because if you look back at the PSE recommendations, if you read the document we've just talked about under item 6, one of their recommendations is that the planning system seems not to be working and that they want more intervention from the centre. My problem that I have is that the planning authority at the centre is riding two horses. It's basically a setter of directive and policy at top level, but yet it is also intervening in regard to development. So there is a conflict, and I don't care what Chinese walls they erect within the department. One directly interferes with the other. I would just like to see we are trying to actually streamline and make the system work. And I think if you look at our stats, you'll see that. And yet here we have interference from the centre, which stop development and basically come back and say, now you can go on after a number of months without a proper explanation. So part of our query, I think you're right, should be saying, we would require you, if you intervene in this way, state why you're intervening, And then if you actually give no directive, say that you've gone through, just don't come back and say you can go on now and do it. Sorry, Councillor McCann, Stephen.
Thank you, Chair. And listen, you're right, and Councillor Reddy makes a very valid point as well. So I'm happy to second his proposal that we do go back to him and seek further explanations. I suppose I don't think it's going to be the case in this particular application, but who's to say if this came up again, it could actually scupper a development. As time goes on, building materials can increase in price. We've all seen that. So potentially it could scupper development. So no, listen, fully agree with what you're saying for sure.
Yep. Councillor Thompson.
Yeah. Sentiments exactly, but I didn't go as far as that. But happy enough to support the comments that have been made by Councillor Riley and Councillor McCann.
You've made a proposal right back to him, wasn't that right? And you've seconded that, Stephen. Yeah, are we all agreed? It can be coupled in with one of the other letters as well, because we have a couple of letters going back in regard to sort of joint things. Right, Kim? Yeah. Next thing.
The last bit of correspondence then is from the Royal Town Planning Institute here in Northern Ireland, and it's just to note that the Fermanagh and Omagh Planning team has been shortlisted for the category of Northern Ireland Planning Authority of the Year, and the winners will be announced at an event on the 12th of June at 12:30 p.m. at Riddle Hall in Belfast. So we're asked to send some nominations to that event, and you may want to nominate either the chair or your chair, the councillor yourself.
Yeah, I would suggest that we get the incoming chair plus two others, whoever the incoming chair is, and we can bounce from maybe one of the other parties. Two officers as well. Is that on top of the three, or? Oh, right, one elected member, two officers, right. So we'll just send the chair. We happy enough of that? And then two officers. Okay. Kind of a proposer. Councillor O'Reilly and a seconder, I think. Councillor Campbell. All agreed? Yep, that's okay. Is that dealt with correspondence now? Yep, sorry, Tom. Yeah, go ahead.
You're all right. I think it should be noted, well done. I think that's a very good point to be able to nominate it and being put forward there. And I think that it should be recognised and noted within the committee that congratulations to that point, and we wish well then on the day.
Yep. That's Councillor McCann.
Absolutely. I just want to be associated with Tom's remarks. It is a huge achievement even to be selected. So I think we are, as a local authority planning department, leading the way, I suppose, and planning like to be associated just with Thomas's remarks. And congratulate all involved. So fair play to you.
Yeah. If you look at some of the correspondence, particularly around the PAC, they talk about learning in regard to LDP. I don't necessarily want to blow our own trumpet, but the interaction that I've had over the last 9 years with other of the 10 authorities, 10 councils, they haven't taken the approach that we, FODC, took right at the start, where we actually had a steering group of members and officers working together. Obviously, the officers did the heavy lifting, but we as members actually gave oversight and guidance in regard to policy and content. And the officers actually said, what can work, what can't work, how can we get around this? I haven't seen that type of cooperation in the other 10 councils. I think it just doesn't seem to be there. I think we should be pushing for it to be there, because this is an ongoing process. And the outcome basically is what you see today. We've got our draft, our plan strategy through. We're well embarked on the local policies plan, and we have a dedicated team, even though that team has turned over just the way staff goes in and out. It has worked very well. And I can say from the chair, and it's been echoed from the floor, that we have an extremely good, I believe, working relationship between members and officers. And long may that continue, because one is here to advise and the other is here to actually make a policy decision or decisions, but based on sound planning legislation. and we get that guidance. So well done, chaps and ladies. So the chaps was a generic term, you know.
Can I just also
Yes.
place on record my appreciation of all of the work that has been led by the planning team through Paul and the planning colleagues, and also for the good working relationship that there's been with the planning committee and with the local development plan steering group through the local development plan work, and also the really significant work on our local planning improvement programme over the past year. And we can really see the benefits of that now coming to fruition.
Right, members, I don't want to worry you, but there is an intervention here by our solicitor. And when it's not called for, but it's out of his own sort of initiative, I do wonder what's going to happen. So, Philip, you have the floor.
Chair somewhat irregularly, but as an employee of another council, can I just join in the congratulations from members in relation to the shortlisting of the team? I would agree it is very well deserved.
Thank you very much. Councillor Campbell, Glenn.
Yeah, well, I mean, I echo everything that's been said. You know, it is a positive, good news story. No doubt we picked up by local press. And we welcome that also, of course. We do welcome that support as well. And I suppose an appropriate juncture, I think, to commend you as chair as well for your term. You know, I do know what it's like up there. I know that it's, of all the chairs, you're surrounded by expertise and good people around you. So I don't give you all the credit, you know, because I know you have all that support, but you've done very well. And of course, the other side, you've got us down here. So kind of balances out. You need all the help you can get at times. So I commend you for your role as chair. And I also want to commend the officers, and Kim in particular, who's probably in one of our last, maybe our last planning meeting, or certainly approaching, and to wish Kim well for retirement. And as I say, it is in particular, I can't speak with experience of other committees because I've mainly been involved in planning, but it is very reassuring to have the calibre of people beside the chair at the top table, and Kim certainly one of those people, and I commend her for her work and wish her well for the future. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, exactly, well done. And I'll chat to Kim afterwards and say thank you as well. Members, yes, Earl?
Yep, thanks, Chair. And I want to be associated with Councillor Campbell's remarks with regard to yourself and our team at the top table here. Work in an excellent way. And I want to obviously associate it with Councillor Campbell's remarks with regard to Director Kim McLaughlin. I suppose I've served on the ODC Legacy Council with Kim as I think she was maybe a policy officer at that time, and worked our way through.
Yeah, don't tell us her age now.
But I'm not going to give her age away. However, I know this is our last planning committee meeting, and I want to take this opportunity to wish her all the very best in her retirement in a short time. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. That's echoed by us all. Yep, well done. Right, there's no urgent and relevant business. I don't think anybody has approached John or myself. So we'll go into confidential section. I need a proposer. Councillor Feely, Councillor McGrath, all agreed? Oh, Councillor Riley. Tom.
Mayor, I want to declare an interest in
That's okay.
2.2 and confidential.
Yep. Well, if you go out, we'll call you back in. It's okay. And Kim, could you summarise?
Thank you, Chair. So during confidential business, members received a report on various legal matters and noted the report, and members also received correspondence from DAERA and agreed a course of action in that regard.
Thank you. Could a proposer and seconder in that regard? Councillor McCloughery and Councillor McCann, all agreed? Thank you very much. Members, that you finished within the time, and again, my thanks to Councillor McCloughery for taking the first part of the meeting. Go home and enjoy yourselves now.